Okay? Good? We up? All right, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Christopher Snyder. I am the Region 8 Program Administrator. I've taken over for these two lovely ladies here to my right, Dr. Celeste Merriweather and Miss Joanna Powell-Chestnut, who were the gurus from Bridgeton, I want to say, for at least a decade, right? I mean, at least 10 years. So I have referred to these two pretty much in any difficult situation or anything that I'm really not sure about. Because that does happen when we deal with these McKinney-Vento issues. Is it really something that qualifies for eligibility of services? Or is it someone that we believe is taking advantage of the system? And I realize that can happen. One of the main things that I learned from being involved in this position, I've been the homeless liaison here in our school district for just a little bit over 2 years now, is you got to leave your bias at the door. I mean, that is really the key component for any of this, because you will find that there are situations where the parents you believe are living in one school district, they want to stay in your school district, they're trying to work the system, whatever that may be. But the bias that we have is really towards the family, not towards the kids. That's what happens, is that, and then again, we start judging the kids based upon what the parents do. We can't control that. That is the one thing that we cannot do. We don't control what happens, let's just say, after 3 p.m. each day for these children that are trying to attend our schools. The main goal of a homeless liaison and those that support them is to remove barriers. That's the main gist of what you're going to find in this PowerPoint today, is that we're trying to make sure that the students can maintain a good educational program while they're in school. Because the reality of it is if not, the cycle will continue. And I tell people all the time, if you're a taxpayer in a town and you take it personal, that's going to get you in trouble. Because the bottom line is those kids have a right to be in those schools. There is a law since 1987, believe it or not. McKinney-Vento has been around for that long. And there are caveats every year that the state looks at and says, okay, it seems a lot of our school districts are creating this barrier. Let's remove that. And sometimes that upsets people. It does. And sometimes the position of the homeless liaison can upset people because you have to make decisions based upon the information that you have. In my role in the district, sometimes it's very difficult because I'm also in charge of safety and security in the district, which means that I do a lot of follow-up with our security personnel, which could lead to sometimes residency investigations. So I try to make the best decisions that I possibly can based on the information that I have. But I can tell you this, in my experience in dealing with it, the one thing you want to do is get the kids in school immediately. That's the biggest issue that you face. If there are disputes between districts or how you approach it, the liaison's job is to help facilitate that for the family to appeal, to go to the county superintendent. If the county superintendent doesn't work out, possibly all the way up to the state commissioner of education. There are many case laws in place already that have been heard in court that address 99% of every issue that you're going to come across. But sometimes you do find that you fall into a category where you're just not sure. So when I go through this program here, I always say, you know, like Ghostbusters, who you gonna call? So you're going to call me first, and I'm going to try to help you in the best way I can. And if I have not seen that issue or I'm not familiar with how the law may work with that issue, I'm going to kick it up a little bit higher and go up to the state. And I'm going to ask them to weigh in on that situation. I'm going to tell you, probably again, 99% of all your issues are going to be resolved that way. Or at least that's what I'm going to tell you. Here's what you probably should do. But what you choose to do in your district is really your call. Again, the parents and the guardians still have rights and responsibilities, even if you disagree, that you have to make sure that they understand there's an appeal process in place for them. Because again, I point to, it's about taking care of the kids. The kids are not at fault for what the parents do. Okay, that's my opening speech. I hope you enjoyed it. All right, so again, this is a link to our live stream. Is everyone good with that? You've taken your images, whatever you need? Okay. So this is a blend of 3 different PowerPoints that I've taken what I call the greatest hits from each of them. McKinney-Vento 101 is a training segment that you can find right here. If you are a liaison, how many liaisons in the room? Okay, so there's a few. If you go to the National Center for Homeless Education, I must tell you, it can be overwhelming because there is a ton of information that is available to homeless liaisons to really get you on the ground and understanding what your roles are and responsibilities. If you go to this site, there is a variety of tools in which you can use. I've taken this 101 training segment and then I modified it and added some of the local flavor that we need, especially here in Salem County. So again, all of this is available. You'll notice another thing. There is no paper for me to hand out to you. I'm not a paper guy. I am strictly technology as much as we can, because everything that I have, every form, every tool that you can use is linkable in here. And if you're a person that needs to have the tangible, that's okay. You could just print it out at your leisure however you want. All right, so I've developed a McKinney-Vento Region 8 website off of Woodstown's main site. Thank you, Mrs. Grossman, who our superintendent is in the back today.
Morning.
And basically she's given me permission to be able to host this website on here for all of you. Again, so that you're not sitting there going, well, where is that PowerPoint at? How do I get to it? Where are the forms at? Every form is going to be inside this PowerPoint. However, if you go to the website, you'll see that there are 3 links on the left-hand side. And each of those links, one will take you to like good resources where you can get more information. And then the second one will take you to all of the different Google Forms that we have. And then the last one will take you to links that are like resources that are printable. Things that you could print out, posters, handouts, brochures, things like you may want to give to some people, especially your registrars, transportation coordinators, people that work with homeless students. So if you just go to woodstown.org, you'll see there's a big blue strip, and it'll say Region 8, and that'll take you into all of the resources that I have listed in this PowerPoint.
It was a strategy to get more hits on our website. Just saying.
And so far it's working. I just looked yesterday, I had over 100 different people access it. So at least people are going to it and can see. So it's a place where you're not scratching your head looking for things. Again, here is our information. Again, it's right on the PowerPoint. If you feel more comfortable taking a picture, feel free. I am accessible 24/7. I've answered liaisons' calls and emails and all kinds of things on weekends, because I realize Monday morning someone may be coming in first thing in the morning and you need to address it. You need some guidance. So don't hesitate to call me, especially I text a lot too. My cell phone here for work does text. So Stu knows that well. You know, have text each other on weekends and so on and so forth, trying to address issues. So I am fully accessible. Our state coordinator for homeless education is Danielle Anderson-Thomas. You can see the email on the bottom. Again, that's just for general questions. If you want to sidestep me, I take no offense if you need something you feel rises to the state level. But I do have a lot of her private contact information. So again, she asked me not to share that, obviously, but I have the information. If you contact me, I will do my best to get you an answer within 24 hours. That's always my goal. I don't want to sit on things, because again, kids, get lost in the loop, in the shuffle. I had a situation like that already this year, working with a district where, I contacted them and, they contacted me. We played tag back and forth. And in the meantime, the kids were not in school. So they missed 8 days of school while we were too busy bouncing around trying to communicate with one another. And those are the things that have a drastic impact on the kids. Imagine that, missing the first 8 days of your school year where all of that important information has started. So the kids are already playing catch up. And that's the one thing we want to avoid. Again, these are the county offices of education. Some of these may have changed, but I know for sure in Cumberland County, Leslie White Coursey is the new executive county superintendent. She attended my training last week. Great lady, very smart, and will be doing a great job. So if you're a Cumberland County person and you have an issue that rises to the level of dispute, that office would be the one that you would speak to. and certainly you would direct any family that is looking for homeless services, if they were deemed ineligible and they wanted to dispute, that would be a place to go. Everybody okay with that? Okay, about the National Council for Homeless Education. It's the Technical Assistance Center. It is located, I believe, in North Carolina. This is a lot of information that are on here. Everything can be reached right off of the main link, National Council for Homeless Education. I just put all these pieces in there because they're just broken out, so if you only need to see them. I will tell you the webinars are really good, especially if you're looking for specific things. There are things about transportation coordinators, things about registration, things about national trends, local trends. All kinds of different webinars are available. They're only about an hour long, and someone will walk and guide you through that, and you can ask questions as you go along. The other thing is, especially for our liaisons, where I have that link for products, those products are where you can find the posters. And they're very important, and it's required, part of McKinney-Vento Act, that there be information very plainly posted in our schools that gives the rights and responsibilities about McKinney-Vento. NCHE provides those all nicely delineated out for you, and has a little box that says your homeless liaison is. You can either write or type it in. You can actually contact them, and they will make the posters for you. They'll make them as big as you want them. So I've gotten boxes of them before, and I've just distributed them to the main offices, and if you went in our main offices, you would find that information. And that's an important thing for a liaison to do. Even after you distribute them, check. Make a walk around. Take a look. I know it may sound like, you know, it's just another thing that's up there, but I've actually had families come to me because they saw the poster, and they did not realize. A lot of families do not even realize they're entitled to some eligibility and assistance for their kids through this act. I also have a little poster, and I'll share that with you later, that I created myself that has all of the individual information about the school. You can feel free to take that, make a copy of it, and use it as your own. All right, so our session outline for today is to kind of look at the context, education and homelessness, right here in the state of New Jersey, locally, Salem County, and nationally. I'm going to look at it under ESSA and the state of New Jersey. So ESSA is Every Student Succeeds Act. And when that was signed in, it kind of changed some of the programmatic aspects of McKinney-Vento. But the state of New Jersey actually has their own website for homeless students in the state of New Jersey, and there's a lot of caveats and information on there too. And I'll get to that later. Homeless with homework, we'll talk about a scenario as we get to the end. And don't forget this, if you've come already with scenarios, and I've had this at every training session, that we have X and Y is happening and you need this and you need that, I am certainly capable of trying to help you right now, and maybe your question is pertinent to everyone in the group. So feel free, if something triggers something in your mind that you've dealt with or you think you're going to be dealing with, just ask the question, I'll do my best to answer.
Mr. Schneider, I
yes.
have one already.
Yes.
So I see a couple of superintendent colleagues here,
Yes.
hoping that they know that they cannot be the McKinney-Vento homeless liaison. They can only be the support for the McKinney-Vento homeless liaison, because things would get kicked in that process of appeal. Things would get kicked to the superintendent first. So don't set yourselves up in that way.
Okay. I was not aware of that rule. I've never heard that rule, but I'm okay.
I don't know if it's a rule. It's just a
Good
safety
practice.
Safety best
Good
practice. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so one of the things that I want to show you is, for especially our liaisons and support people, this is a video that was done on PBS. It's really well done. It's about 5 or 6 minutes long, about a homeless case and working with students. Pay attention very closely, because it actually defines some of the roles of the homeless liaison while they're in there. The state of New Jersey made a really good one as well, but it's a little bit long. It's about 20 minutes long. It is on the website. So I would suggest you take a look at that too, because it goes over people doubling up, goes over people living in hotels, ones that are completely homeless living out of a car. So it's always good to take a look at some of those. But for this one, I want you to take a look at this video. And then hopefully that may generate some conversation.
Next, how a school district in Kansas is grappling with the problems of homeless students. PBS special correspondent Lisa Stark of our partner Education Week reports. It's part of our weekly series, Making the Grade.
Let's go, keep the ball in bounds.
It's varsity basketball practice at Schlegel High School in Kansas City, Kansas. And 6'6" senior Malik Kashan is the tallest guy on the team, determined on the court and off.
I just had to set my mind to it, had to be focused, real focused, to get back where I needed to be.
Back from a place he never expected to find himself. A few months ago, Malik had nowhere to live.
Me and my mother had a little miscommunication, and one word led to another. I don't want to get too deep into it because I still love my mother, but it just wasn't right at the moment, so she just kicked me out.
All right, so.
Did you realize he was homeless?
I did not know. I did not know.
How did you find out?
He told me. He told me through a text message.
But by the time Malik told Coach Prentice Potts what was going on, he was sleeping on a friend's floor and had missed nearly a month of school. A common problem for homeless students who are more likely to fall behind and drop out.
If I'm jumping from place to place, I'm not as focused on my schoolwork. I gotta think about what I'm eating for the night. I gotta think about my bills not being paid. I gotta think about all this extra stuff.
It blew me away, excuse me, getting choked up. It blew me away for the simple fact is he never communicated anything like that, and his spirits are always so high. You never could tell by looking at him that that's what he was going through.
My little sister, my big brother.
Malik now lives in housing for homeless youth and gets services from the school district. Under federal law, districts must identify homeless students, those on the streets, doubled up in motels and shelters, or like Malik, on their own.
Did you do the intake with Miss Marie?
Districts must also have a homeless liaison. Here, that's Carrie Rennick. Her job is to make sure homeless students have the support they need to stay in school.
We provide educational services to make sure that kids get enrolled in school, get transportation back and forth to school, and then just kind of ensuring that their everyday needs are met.
Student homelessness is a widespread problem. Nearly 1 in 4 school districts in the U.S. gets federal grant money to help provide services for homeless students. And that money is stretched thin. It amounts to an average of $50 per student. So the district also counts on outside help.
Everything in here is donated.
This room overflows with supplies for homeless students and families. This is one of the poorest districts in Kansas. This year, the school district expects to help more than 1,000 homeless students, nearly 5% of the student population. Over time, the solution became clear. To help homeless students, they needed to help homeless families.
I had to come to the realization that I wasn't doing enough. That although everything that I was doing was well intended, I was putting a Band-Aid on things.
In 2015, Rennick put out a call for help. 27 groups responded, nonprofits, civic groups, state agencies.
I think the level of collaboration is very unusual.
Desiree Moniz runs Avenue of Life, a nonprofit that helps low-income families and oversees this collaboration.
My oldest daughter, her school had referred me to here.
Here's how it works. Once a family is certified by the school district as homeless, they can get assistance through a program called Impact Wednesday. They meet with a case manager, take classes on employment, finance, and housing. In return, there is help finding a job and a home.
Pay for transportation, food, and clothing.
The program has taken off.
We piloted last year when the school district opened in August, and in the close of year 1, we were able to house 58 families, permanently housed, and saw a 19% reduction in homelessness within the district by the close of year 1.
And already this school year, 65 families settled in homes, including the family of 2nd grader Daisy Swift, her 5th grade sister Cece Tybout, and their mom, Angela Jordan, a hairdresser.
You guys have everything together?
What if the school district program hadn't been there to help you?
We wouldn't be here right now. I don't know where we would be. We'd probably be on the streets or living in our car.
Avenue of Life found them this one-bedroom apartment, covered the deposit and 1 month's rent. The girls attend their original elementary school, even though it's not their neighborhood school. Federal law requires districts to provide transportation to the school students started the year in, even if they move into permanent housing during the school year.
To keep one kid at one school for 1 year would just have the best outcome for their learning and their potential to pass and go on to the next grade.
They knew that that was their safe zone. You know, they could go there and be relaxed and know that they were fine there.
These transportation costs do add up. 2 years ago, the district spent $450,000 to transport homeless students.
I'll see you guys after school.
But they reduced that by more than 20% last year by finding homes for families.
Do you have cooking stuff that's in your house?
Kansas City didn't start out to rescue homeless families, but that's just what happened when they focused on saving students.
What is your goal for these kids? To see them graduate and end the cycle of homelessness. I mean, my greatest blessing would be for Malik to graduate and him never enter the system again.
Malik is on track to become the first of his siblings to get a traditional high school diploma. Then his plans include junior college.
Just me graduating, walking the stage is going to be a proud moment for us.
And a proud moment for the district.
Good.
Which found that fighting student homelessness takes a full court press. In Kansas City, Kansas, I'm Lisa Stark of Education Week for the PBS NewsHour.
Okay, so what are some of the takeaways that you saw in that particular segment? What are some of the takeaways? Anyone? Yes.
It's a federal mandate. It's bigger than us.
Federal mandate, absolutely. It is law. There's a process that's put in place for each of the stages that it goes down through state, local, and then into your school system. But it is a federal mandate. If you didn't pick up on one of the other takeaways, which was that when a student finds permanent housing during a school year, they may continue to stay in that school district for the rest of that school year. And that includes all the services that go with it. And that includes free and reduced lunch, your transportation costs, and any other supports that you can give them. Because again, it's about stability. And having those kids being in a stable environment, which they're already familiar with, is in their best interest. That's definitely a gamer. One of the things that I found very interesting in that segment, and this is the thing that you're gonna run into, I always did as the homeless liaison, is that kind of like, you know, how federal law is, you know, that things kind of stop at the schoolhouse gate door. Well, that's the problem with some of these homeless situations. We spend probably twice as much, if not more, in transportation costs than if we tried to do a program like they do, which is help them provide some type of permanent placement, some type of housing, because that's always what the issue is. And every time I run into it, it's the same thing. And I loved what she said in there, is that they provide the first month's rent and the security deposit. You know how many folks that I met with that just said, I just can't afford a new place because I can't afford 2 months rent at the same time. People are living paycheck to paycheck. And I know even people that are doing okay are living paycheck to paycheck. You know, so again, it's a lot of empathy and a lot of biased location over here trying to help these folks. In my school district, we're small. I have about 10 students this year at most that are registered as homeless eligible. In some school districts, it's over 200. In some, it's over 2,000. You know, it all depends on how big it is. How many in here are a paid homeless liaison? Okay, only a couple of you. And every training that I've done, there is only a couple of you in each one of those. And that usually depends upon the size of the number of students you are registering under that, because it can be a daunting task. Those students that are registered as homeless eligibility, guess who takes up all the services of the school? Those students. And a lot of them are classified. So they need special education services on top of all of the other services. Again, the idea, as was indicated in the video, is to break the cycle of poverty. And the only way to do that is the school is the equalizer. That's where we are. There's no other agency that really can do what we can do as early as we do it in order to try to get the kids focused on their future. So keep that in mind. Any other takeaways that you thought you heard? Yes.
One thing that really struck out to me was the collaboration that they had with many of the community agencies, and that's how they were able to really bring in that parent piece. That was really eye-opening because they really were able to make inroads, particularly with, say, paying the rent and everything. That's something that certain school districts can't do, but being able to link up with other agencies that are able to help them and have that workshop, those different type of workshops, that was really key in really getting to the root of the problem and not doing the Band-Aid as that as the young lady in the group said. So that's something that kind of really got my wheels to spinning, like, wow, what can we do in my district to start to move in that direction? We've always collaborated, but it seems like they really made it meaningful and really went out there to do some real work, and then were able to see the data immediately.
Right.
You know, see those results immediately, and not only what they choose to do, but really stopping homelessness, which is what we're all trying to work ourselves out of a job.
Right.
When this is concerned. So
Absolutely.
thank you for showing us that. That was an excellent.
Yeah, well, and the other issue is, like, I love, like you said in there, it was immediate results. You know, it was over 60 families the first year they ran it. The second year they were on path to exceed that, 65 families. Imagine the joy that you would feel being able to help somebody get in a permanent housing situation. That's always amazing to me. You know, and it took a lot of coordination, time, and effort. You know, some of the things that I'm trying to do is reach out to some of the support agencies that are available here in our different counties. Family Success Center is a big one. Again, you know, going back to Bridgeton, who turned me on to some of the people that are doing work down there. I mean, it's pretty amazing, and it's a lot of it is tied to this. So if I can make a suggestion to you, and you have some of these situations, Family Success Center can offer a lot of guidance and support for the parents. That's the key component that's missing out of this, that I wish we in education, they would provide some additional supports to help the parents. So, and I'll get to when we get to the grant funding a little bit for that. This I just put up here for your benefit. If you have not read New Jersey State Administrative Code, you want to click on this link. I'm not going to click on it because it's just a series of papers with words, but these are the actual law and code that you want to use as your guide, as definitely a liaison, and in the supports personnel, you're going to want to familiarize yourself with that, because that will give you all of the caveats that are related to what the rights and responsibilities are for students and families that are considered homeless in your district. Some of the challenges, obviously, that we just saw from the video, poor health, things, that young man was thinking about was, where's my next meal coming from, let alone where am I supposed to live? How am I supposed to do good in school? School takes a back seat to all of the other staples that we take advantage of every day. I open my refrigerator, there's food in it. I turn on a light switch, electricity lights my house. In a lot of cases, that's not happening. And especially when you're doubled up. When families are doubled up, they're at the mercy of the people who hold the lease or who own the property. And when that case can happen, at any day, they could be gone and out. And that's what I say a lot of times when you get into these situations where you're thinking, well, they've been living there for 3 or 4 years. And that may be. And that may be. And you can think that they're taking advantage of it. Follow the law. The law says, are they on the lease? Are they supporting the families that are in there by paying certain utilities, so on and so forth? If you can prove all of that, well, then you might have a case. Might. But the reality of it is if they're not on the lease and they're not on a mortgage paper, they're subject to dismissal at any time. It's no different than being in a hotel or a motel. They can just kick you out whenever they want. Poor nutrition, fatigue, and obviously the last one that I find the most of is stress and trauma. I find that a lot because a lot of these kids have been bouncing around for quite a bit. And again, there are parents that aren't doing the right things that they should be doing. There are parents, I can guarantee you in your district, there are parents that are already out there who you have not identified. I guarantee it. And they won't come forward because, the people that they're living with may be in the system, maybe have been incarcerated before, or maybe they do drugs in the household, and unfortunately the kids see that kind of information. You have to listen really closely when you're interviewing, and I try to make sure that I interview with kids present 9 times out of 10, just so I can ask the kids how they're doing, so on and so forth, while they're there. It's always a good idea, to meet the kids. Students experience homelessness. These are some really likely things that you will see. Chronically absent, get lower grades, obviously special education, do poorly. And a lot of them will end up dropping out, especially the ones that I have seen come into the high school. Like I might see someone, an 18-year-old student who moved in with a friend, and now they're coming to our school, but they've been absent for 2 months during the school year. They were going to Triton, and now they've been disappeared for 2 months, and now they show up on our doorstep. They're an unaccompanied youth. They want to come to our school. They're living with this friend, so on and so forth. Register them. Get them in the school. Look at your attendance policies and say, does it make sense? I've had principals say to me before, like, sorry, they've been out 60 days. There's nothing I can do for them. They can come back and repeat the year next year. And I say, well, isn't there anything that you can do? Don't you have any type of programs? Don't you have anything you can work with the students? Can they make up the extra work if they're willing to do it? Try to work with them. Try to waive some of the attendance pieces. Put them on a probation contract. You missed so many more days, then we're having another conversation. Give them opportunity, because I guarantee you the door's been shut in their face multiple times. And I don't know what happened with that student and their parent that led them to flee. I don't know. They only give you half information. Could be all the student, but students are allowed to make a lot of mistakes. They are. Questions so far? Anything jumps out at you? Okay. Causes of homelessness, as we said, a lack of affordable housing, and I find that no matter where they are. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what community it is, there seems to be a lack of affordable housing for folks. And I must tell you, most every homeless parent that's come into me, if I ask them, are you employed? Where are you working? They tell me every time, and they're working. They're making minimum wage or just above it. And folks, if you know anybody that's an adult that's pulling minimum wage down, it's what my son makes at the Heritage when he works over there. And he actually makes more than that. So I know he can't even support himself on his own, right? And he's working the same type of job that some of these adults are working, right? So obviously, could they use retraining and some of the things that are out there? Yes, they could. But a lot of times, they avoid all of those things, as I said, because of the system, being part of the system. They don't think anyone will help them. Again, other causes of homelessness, health problems, lack of insurance. Fleeing domestic violence is definitely one. Natural and other disasters. Anyone have anyone come from one of the hurricane regions into your area? Okay. We had one that came and left pretty short time, was only here for a few weeks. But again, was in Puerto Rico, got devastated, came here to live with a cousin, unaccompanied youth, and then moved on to another area. But again, we immediately registered and tried to deal with it from there. LGBTQ is another issue. See a lot of runaways in that area, especially nationally, and it's only rising. That's not an area that's going down. So you may see that in your district where kids are coming to live with other kids because there's acceptance, but no acceptance in the home. So you may have that. Preventive value of education. This is probably the most important thing. If I could translate anything to you again, I keep going back to this. Leave your biases at the door, because the education is the great equalizer. It is. And I don't know how many of you, are college graduates. I'm assuming all of you in this room probably are. And you came to it through many different ways. I can tell you in my own instance for myself, my family were blue-collar workers. My dad was a maintenance man. My mom was a secretary. There was no talk of college in my family whatsoever, right? But I had smarts enough at least to get into the military, and the military led me on a path that said, hey, you can if you want, and here's the things that you can do. Not many of our kids are offered that opportunity. They see it as hopeless, really do. And even with schooling, like I said, with the attendance building up and the lack of doing, homework and things because they're in a hotel over top of 3 other kids trying to do it, it becomes secondary to just life. So again, we have to work with those kids because, again, if not, they're going to be out, and the next thing you know, where can they make more money? Probably standing on the corner. So that's one of the things that we have to think about. It costs a lot more to incarcerate someone than to educate someone. Again, if you get them into a homeless eligibility, high school graduation is associated with a lot of positive outcomes. Unemployment goes down, criminal justice goes down, income goes up, health incomes, etc. And 95% of the jobs since the Great Recession has gone to workers with at least some post-secondary experience. So again, our goal is not just to do this portion. Part of the liaisons, and it'll come up in a later slide, part of your role is to actually help students get guided towards their post-secondary choices. Not college is not for everyone. We know that. Some kids are really good with their hands. Some are just great workers. But there are good paying jobs that are out there with just a little bit of training, just a little bit of skill, just a little bit of an internship, maybe with a welding company, or you want to get them towards the vocational school, something that you're helping to direct them. And it's a good idea for liaisons to touch base with counselors, even in the lower grade levels. Just ask them what they want to be when they grow up. Maybe no one's ever asked them. That's a possibility. Some of these statistics, probably a little bit shocking for you, but obviously students with less than a high school diploma or GED have a 346% chance of being in the system some way after school. So if they decide to drop out somehow, some way, they will end up in our prison system or probation system or one other system of work in which they are not able to make choices on their own. I always tell kids when they come in my office, back when I was an assistant principal, your options are like this in high school. And the more you start leaning towards not getting your education, the more they start going like this. And it's amazing how that visual effect can have a lot of change in the way they perceive things. I do it all the time, even with the homeless students when I meet with them, especially the upper grade students. We have a pair of twins that are here that are seniors, and they're very nice boys, but they've been living out of hotels and doubled up for the last 3 years of their life. And so it's like constantly being bounced all over the place. So school kind of goes over here. They're able to maintain C's, maybe sometimes D's, but they're trying. They're making an effort. And they want to do other things. They want to pursue other things. They just don't know how to go about doing it. So maybe as a liaison, you can help get them in the right direction or put them in touch with somebody that can. Some of these other statistics that you can see in here, these are all the risk categories that are related to how education can help overcome those things. Another great thing about education is visuals for all of us. See, if you guys have some type of professional degree or doctoral degree, you can see you're at the top of the pie chart. Not in this case, it's a bar chart, but you can see where it starts. Less than high school in a lifetime, you're going to make less than $1 million. If you keep going up the chain, your opportunities expand. And likelihood that you will make more money, which will be helpful, obviously, towards your family and towards yourself. So again, that's what we try to tell our students. Give them the visuals. Homelessness creates barriers. This is another link to a document on the bottom. I'm not going to click on it here for you, but Common Signs of Homelessness. That's a great one for liaisons to give support personnel. Teachers. How many of you have done a training at a faculty meeting or talked to people at a faculty meeting? Okay, great. And I would suggest that for your liaisons. Talk to your principal of a building and just say, hey, can I have 15 minutes to just talk a little bit about maybe this document, Common Signs of Homelessness, and there's some of the things that I just went over. So you give that document out and you tell the individuals, listen very carefully. Our teachers are the best resources, especially when there's changes in the household, because that student will trust at least one adult at the school, 9 times out of 10. We hope they will, because that's a caring environment. So that student will go to that caring adult, spill whatever is on the table, and then the homeless liaison can react from there. School-related changes, and again, I put this out to our liaisons, all the district superintendents. Again, any associated personnel that has to do with helping students in these cases need the training. And that's because there's a lack of school and educational stability for many of these kids, and the only way to get them in there is to have everybody on the same page. All right, so I'm going to move on from that. And let's just take a 5-minute break. All All right, so if you want to grab something to eat, grab a cup of coffee, a water bottle, take 5 minutes, and then we'll come back to it.
Chris, do I pause? How do we pause this? Just let it roll?
Just let it roll.
Yeah, we just tried to turn it
I turned the air and I closed some of the windows. It's very, very warm in here with me minutes, so it kind of cranks. Yeah, it's blowing right on the back. I turned it off. That's what it'll help.
I know it's a little warm in here, folks, and that's why I'm giving you to move around a little bit.
How are you? Nice to see you.
I think we sat next to each other at an NJDOE meeting.
Absolutely.
You and your business administrator.
Yes,
Is
yes.
she still here too?
She is.
Good.
She
She
is.
walked in and said, I know her.
That's awesome. Great. How about with you?
And that
Nobody
went
listens
too long.
on what, right?
Nobody. No. It's great to see you.
You as well. Thank you.
Hi. Absolutely. Maybe. I'll try.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's better already. That's less freezing. I know. I'm sitting here like shaking.
Jim, I was glad you said the superintendent shouldn't be the leader. Good thing I brought my nurse. I said that's the first thing we're changing.
Yep. Yeah, you shouldn't do that. That's Debbie Moore got it. Hi,
All right,
Debbie.
nice to meet you.
Pleased to meet you.
Okay. Change that first thing.
I got your back.
So what do they look at it as like
A conflict of interest, absolutely. Because the problems would get kicked up to you. And then you can't really advocate for the kids because you have to advocate for the board because that's your job.
Right.
Makes sense. I mean, well, I guess a lot
Because
of
I
like
was
school
the homeless
councils.
liaison in West Hampton,
I'll
and
check it
then Danielle Steele Thomas, or what, Anderson Thomas, told me, she's like, oh honey, you can't do that. I'm like, why not? Because they're, again, small district, there's no people. So I had to bounce it to somebody else, but it's the truth, right? When you think about it.
Yeah, it makes
Sharon
sense.
had her talk, and she said she needs to do it, and she said, oh, you're going to do it now.
And it's so common sensible.
Right.
Just do what's right for the kid. You know, it's just common sense.
Well, it makes sense. Part of it is, you know, like the health, the wellness.
In our county with the signature that we do, that we agree that we don't charge each other, that's fantastic.
Right.
I wish this could get it to go that way. Because that's just brutal on tiny districts. The transportation as well.
Who is typically the liaison in the districts? Like a counselor, a nurse?
It really depends. I mean, on districts that have supervisors, it's usually one of the supervisors.
Okay.
But we're so tiny, we don't have any of us. So I've seen the CST person.
All right, please continue to chat and chew. That's okay. I just want to make sure that I'm cognizant of your time and then give you opportunity to ask any questions if you have any as we get towards the end. ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act, was signed into law in December 2015 by President Barack Obama at the time. And obviously that was a reauthorization of all the pieces from No Child Left Behind that was instituted during the Bush years. A lot of these ESSA amendments provide new opportunities for schools to help students experiencing homelessness succeed in school. So again, the McKinney-Vento Act came into play in 1987 because the country realized at the time we were having a problem with homelessness and stability for students. So that's why this law came into play. And again, through this reauthorization, it allowed districts to do some additional things with transportations, state put kind of regulations for students so that they could get their good education. Defining homelessness can sometimes be tricky, especially when you look at it from this point of view. So children or youth who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence, including children and youth. All right, so when you look at that, that's where a lot of districts get in trouble with the doubled up situation, because they look at the doubled up and say, well, you know, they're living in a fixed and adequate, and obviously it's a regular nighttime residence. The kids are going back there every day after school. They're laying their head down. Why are they still considered homeless eligible at that point? And again, as I indicated, because they have no control or power over whether or not they can stay. For how long can they stay? I don't know about you, but I dealt with a family, especially when it came to being in a particular place. They were living in one residence in Woodstown, and I went to do a wellness check, knocked on the door. They weren't there. There was no signs of them being there. I said, okay. So I called the mom, and I said, where are you guys at? Oh, you know, they kicked us out. We're now over here on a different street. Okay, are you available? Can I do a wellness check? Yes, come on over. So a lot of times, they're just trying to be people and do what they do. And you know, I know probably in your positions, does everyone follow up when they're supposed to follow up? No. It takes you 10, 12 times, more emails. Hey, did you get my email? So on and so forth. A lot of times, that's what happens with families when it comes to these adequate nighttime residences. But even if they were in that place and they were staying there and it seems stable, I've had situations where someone's lived there for 6 months and there were no problems. People came in, hey, how are you? So on and so forth. And 6 months later, they had a falling out. And now we're back to square one. Now they're in a hotel somewhere. So homelessness doesn't stop because they're sharing a residence with someone. Now, if their name is on the lease, they agree, hey, we're going to be living here together. And this is a shared residence, and we're, using the same utilities. I'm going to pay for this utility, you pay for that utility. Well, that can change. That could change the ballgame. And you could say, you might have a case and say, well, it appears to me that you're living in a permanent placement now. And most parents, I would think, are going to say, okay, unless, of course, they're in an out-of-district place and they want to stay in your district. And that can happen, absolutely. Again, as a homeless liaison, you have every right to knock on the door to do a wellness check. And every right. Now, again, I don't know how reaching that you are in those things. I usually try to stay in communication with the parents at least a couple times a month, knock on the door now and again. But again, I don't have a very large homeless population, so it might be more difficult for you to do that in your district. A lot of principals will give you first round information about whether or not somebody's really homeless eligible or maybe trying to take advantage of the system. You have to listen very carefully. But if you're a homeless liaison, your job is to support the child in their maintaining their school of residence. That is the most important thing that you can do. Again, it's not the child's fault that a parent may be taking advantage or trying to manipulate the system. That'll all work itself out in the wash. But again, if you err on the side of the student, you cannot possibly go wrong. Again, there are other cases where they're living in hotels, motels, trailer parks, or campgrounds. We have situations where folks live in campgrounds, and they can be seasonal. And if it's a seasonal campground, you might hear, well, they're living in a seasonal campground. They really don't belong there. As the homeless liaison, that may be true, but your job is not to call the campground and say, hey, you have some folks that are living here, and they really shouldn't be living here. Not your job. If the campground wants to go to those folks and say, you can't be living here, well, that's out of your hands. And then you address that situation as it comes up. But our job is not to make sure that the families are abiding by whatever rules. Like in a hotel, motel, I don't call up the hotel, motel and say, hey, I think that these folks have too many people occupied in their residence. I don't do that. That's not part of what I do because I'm trying to err on the side of the student. I want to keep the students in a good placement. So again, keep that in mind as you're working through some of these things. A lot of times in emergency or transitional shelters, or sometimes they're abandoned in hospitals. I did have a couple districts tell me that they've had that happen, where kids, 7, 8 years old, abandoned in a hospital, parents just disappeared. That does happen. But shelters, generally speaking, most of the shelters that I've spoken to have like a 90-day window in which they work with families. So it'll always more than likely be a temporary thing, and those shelters help those families try to get in a more permanent residence. But again, as a liaison, and they're in your district, and it's kids that you know, and they're living in a shelter, you can look to get some tutoring for those folks that are over there. Most of the shelters that I spoke to, believe it or not, already have some grant monies that they've used to provide tutoring for the kids that are already there. So everyone that I've talked to, at least in the 3 counties, have all said to me, we're good. We have some tutoring that's already available. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me. We see some students on occasion at the shelter, and they're there for 45 days. So my question is, also our confusion is how much but like, I don't know where some of this stuff falls.
Okay, so that's a great question to ask, and I'm going to be honest with you, as we get more into it, you'll see where I'm going with it, but there is grant monies available, and that's part of my job, is to monitor these grant monies and distribute them to the 3 counties and the liaisons and where the money is needed. So part of what we'll do is that I have money that is set aside in this grant for things like uniforms, safety items. Let's say they went to vocational school and they needed safety, steel-toed boots. You would have to purchase them. I can get you reimbursed. So that's how that rule works with the grant. It's unfortunate. I wish I could say, yes, I'll tell me which ones they want, order them, and I'll write the check. But they don't work that way. Everything in the state is about this person pays for it, then they're reimbursed. Now, and when I get to the grant, I'll explain a little bit more, but the money from the grant is all through the feds. All right, so ESSA, and part of that video you watched said that they authorized monies that go out to school districts. In our state, very fortunate that every single region, and this is Region 8, there are 6 of us, all are given funding in order for us to operate. It could be through either different salaries that are in support of these programs, and then obviously programs that are in support, tutoring that's in support, and obviously things like fees, activities, and things like uniforms and associated safety wear, like for athletics. Let's say you had 2 students that wanted to play football, and football specific, so maybe they need some arm pads and they need a mouthpiece and all of that. If your district paid for them, you'll see, and eventually I'll get to it, I have a form which you would submit to me, and you would say, McKinney-Vento students, blah, 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 these are the ones that, use this money for these uniforms.
Well, and I have done that, and it works out well.
Okay.
Certain things. So, but I mean, some of the controversy comes in, like, do we do that as a school, which I've done, or is that the responsibility of the shelter they're at? Do they get grant money for that?
You have to work with the shelter in identifying that. Generally speaking, I would say it's whatever the shelter is willing to pay for. Because, like I said, the state does give each of our school districts across the 3 counties, now it's a limited pot of money, but they do give us money in order to support some of those things. But let's just say, for instance, you had, I'm just throwing a number out here, but let's just say you had 100 students and they all needed $50 worth of uniforms in order to start the school year. That's a lot of money that goes to the grant part out of that, and I couldn't possibly reimburse you for all of that. I try to do it proportional, and that's how I'm going to approach the grant, is proportional by number of students and then each county. And then hopefully, by the districts roll that out that way. But it'll be on a first come, first served basis. So the worst thing you can do is not apply for any of the funding, and then there is nothing there. As far as the shelter goes, you'd have to talk to them, because I don't know what the rules and regulations are, what they are allowed to sponsor. I don't know. I think generally speaking, and maybe Celeste or Joanna can address that, when I spoke to some of the shelters, they basically said that if they purchased uniforms and things for the students, they went to the grant and asked for refund through the grant. Is that true, or no?
No. During the time when we oversaw the grant, we really didn't have any of the shelters ask
Oh, okay.
for reimbursement.
Okay. I just said the ones that I spoke to this year asked me, so maybe they got lack of funding now. I don't know. That always happens.
A lot of shelters certainly don't have a plethora of funds, so it would just be collaborating with that shelter to see exactly what they do have, and then what Chris is able to offer, because, like I said, it's not that much.
Right. But there are some other agencies, and I hope to get this information out to you. I'm working with, was it the Child Interagency Council, I think it's called, Kayak. And they have a variety of all of these support, I don't want to say groups, but they're program models. In other words, like Family Success Center and all these different groups, and they have representatives at each of them, and some of them have grant monies, and they coordinate together to try to serve these folks that are homeless or at-risk students. And so, for instance, like the shelters that say, hey, we're going to try to get them in a permanent housing, they're probably working with another agency to try to get that money that, like that video showed, for a deposit, a security deposit, and a first month's rent. I know like the Catholic Charities does that here in Salem County, because I've directed a couple families to them and they helped them out and got them in permanent housing. So that was really good, and that can happen. So it's a matter of working with all the different resources. I realize that's a lot. I'm trying to circumvent that for a lot of our liaisons by working with them and saying, hey, here is all the resources, and the person that's listed on the contact there is somebody you definitely want to talk to if they have an issue with permanent housing. They'll help them get X. So they're working on that right now. So hopefully we'll get something here in the near future I can share with you, because again, I always point back that yes, I can do a lot for the kids educational wise. We can get them the transportation, the free and reduced lunch. We can get them book bags and supplies and some uniforms and things. But I'm powerless in helping the parent. I'm powerless. I have no jurisdiction over any of that. And that's why it's important to establish some of these relationships with these groups. Because if you can't fix the parents or help the parents, it just keeps going on. Yes, Carol?
Does any of this grant money cover transportation?
It does. Yep.
During the regular school year?
Yes, but it's not for the kind of transportation that you're thinking. Like, it's not a regular bus route. It's extraordinary costs. So in other words, let's just say it took you got a special run for this student. I'm just going to use for the sake of sake, okay? So student went to Woodstown High School, is now living homeless in the only place that they possibly can live, which is down in Millville, and it's on the outskirts of Millville, near Fortescue. So it's a 45-minute ride by car. So it could be over an hour each way. The parent can choose to go to that district if they want to. And a lot of times I would encourage them as liaison. I say, look, I'm just trying to talk to you about the best interest student. No, I know that they're going to do much better at Woodstown. I want them to go to Woodstown. It's the parent's call, and they can call that. And you say, look, Chris, I have nothing that goes out there. It's going to take me some time. I want to get the kids in here ASAP, as quick as possible. You say to me, like, look, I could call Millville, and maybe Millville can help us out on that. Do you have any money that can help in the meantime until I get a run settled? Yes. That's an extraordinary cost. So it might be a week's worth of transportation to transport that student on a Millville bus, because they have something coming out this way, maybe to Shalleck, because it's a school choice program. It's nothing for them to continue up to Woodstown. So it's all about working the system a little bit. And then you can say to me, well, that's an extraordinary cost, Chris, and can we get help on that? Yes, I have some funding that can go to reimburse that. I'm just telling you folks, again, it's a $150,000 grant between 3 counties. And as Celeste will tell you, it will go like that. There's a lot more money built in for instructional purposes, because a lot of these students come in and, again, they're way behind their peers. So we set up programs and tutoring services for those kids, and that's where the majority of that money goes. So, for instance, and I know we're just kind of moving on the topic, for instance, if you have a program that you run for your at-risk youth kids, and you have 5 or 6 of your McKinney-Vento students in that program already that you're helping, that's something I can work to help you offset some of those costs with funding. So that's in mind. But other extraordinary transportation may be, there's an activity that a student participates in, was participating in before they were McKinney-Vento eligible. So they are in some type of gifted and talented program that meets twice a week. And you have been providing transportation for, generally speaking, that student, but other at-risk students. You could ask me, is there any way you can help offset some of these costs? Yes, I have some funding that I can give you. It may not be a lot, but it may cover some of it that you can then reallocate that funding towards something else. So again, there are funds. It's just limited. It's not an unlimited amount. Other questions on that? All right, so just going back to the definition of homeless, these are the things that I generally said, and when we're talking about doubling up, unaccompanied youth includes a homeless child or youth not in the physical custody of a parent or a guardian. I've had more of those in cases of issues where kids are coming from other countries, really. I've had it from other states too, where they show up, and sometimes they're not even ours. They'll show up, they just don't know where to go and what to do. And then I'll direct them to the right places to go. But you do have that. And kids that are very young that just show up and some relative, some uncle somewhere decides that, they're with me. All right, so the percentage of homeless students by primary nighttime residents, as I said, as you can see, this statistic just comes from about 2016, I think. So 76%, the majority double up. They double up with a friend, family member, confidant, guardian, someone. And you can see the other areas. These are the latest reports from the NJDOE statistically. So the number of homeless students in the state of New Jersey, I just got this number in September, is 13,236. And last year it was close to 11,000. And you can see it's almost up 27%. I would guarantee you it's not because we have more homeless students. I would guarantee you it's because liaisons are doing a better job identifying those students. That's a given. And as I said, with that number, nationally, it doesn't even compare because there's probably double that number in the state of New Jersey at least that are considered or could be considered McKinney-Vento eligible. Here in Region 8, in 2016-2017, we had 820. And obviously last year the count was 1,304. And here are your local counts. Salem's right smack in the middle, Cumberland, the highest numbers. This is a good one for our liaisons to realize that you have the authority and responsibility to ensure that eligible students are identified, collaborative effort with school personnel, and through outreach coordination activities and other entities and agencies. Honestly, liaisons, you have all of, excuse me for saying this, the power to determine eligibility. No one else can determine that overall. You can get a lot of input from different people, different agencies, different support personnel, teachers. Get as much and collect as much information as you can, and then weigh that compared to the law and what that is. Because you will have individuals in the school district that, sponsor the funding. That's where it happens. Nothing personal, anyone here, but transportation, VA's office, superintendent's office, they worry about the funding, the dollars and the cents. That's their job, oversight of all those things. Again, as the liaison, you have no oversight over that, and you cannot make your decisions based on that oversight. Your decisions have to be based on the law. What lines up with the law? And you may get a BA that will push back, that will say, well, I don't think that that's right. But ultimately, you have the overall say on that. You certainly want to get the support and help of your superintendent in those issues, but they have to understand that you're just doing a job, and that if you disagree with their assessment of it, you can't sign those documents. If you disagree and you say, look, based upon what my investigation is, they're eligible, and we're on the responsibility side for paying for this, you have to do what you have to do, honestly, because it will get you into a lot of trouble, especially if it gets risen up to the executive county office, and it's pretty obvious to them that you were just trying to save money. That's the one thing you don't want to do, because some of it you can collect money back off of, and some through this grant and other ways. Eligibility determinations, as I said, case by case. Pay close attention to legislative wording, and you can download the determining eligibility for McKinney Rights and Services. It's a little checklist, and I made it into a Word doc, so you'll be able to use that a little bit later. Again, gather as much information, discuss shared housing considerations. And again, sometimes a liaison can hear everything that is said and said, you're really not eligible for services. I've done that too. You have a lease in Pensgrove. Sorry, unfortunately, you're not going to qualify because your name is on the lease there. Well, I really want my kids to go to Woodstown schools. We are a tuition-based school. You can pay tuition for your children to go here. Well, I'm only going to be living there for a short time. I got you, but your name is on the lease, and that's considered permanent residency. If they were McKinney-Vento eligible before they became permanent residency, I would say, okay, you're now domiciled. You live permanent residency in Pensgrove. It's November. Your children are eligible to continue attending school with all the rights and responsibilities of a McKinney-Vento student until June 15th when school ends this year. At that time, I'll also be making contact with the school where they are already at and letting them know that you are living in Pensgrove and that they'll become your responsibility, and they'll be in the summertime to change their placement. All right, and obviously if they're domiciled there for over a year, then you want to make sure that that school district is the one that's taking on their information, NJ Smart and all of that other information. Does that make sense? Anything not unclear on that? Okay. Presume to keep the child and youth in the school of origin is in the school's best interest. Again, I say this over and over, and that's why it's in here 4 or 5 different times. Please always consider the student-centered factors first. Not the parents, not the district. Student first. Liaison's job is, you're like, as the word said, a liaison. You're working with all of these other agencies and things that parents have a difficult time navigating. And I can tell you one of the best things that you want to do, you know, I don't know about you, but usually those parents and guardians are very hard to get a hold of, aren't they? Right? Not return your call, you know, not respond, so on and so forth. The only thing you need to do is call that student to your office and say, can you dial your mom for me? That's it. It's the only thing you need to do. Because there's no student that doesn't have mom's number in their phone or guardian's number in their phone. Student says, can I borrow your phone? Hey, I've been trying to get a hold of you, you know, so on and so forth. Always works great for me. I've never found once, not even once, where that did not work. All right, so I go through the normal channels first. The other thing is, too, is like they like to avoid contact, majority of them. You know, they're quick to come in if something's going on with little Johnny or Susie. But they're not quick to come in if it's like, hey, I need you to fill out this paper, or hey, in order to get you some of this funding here, you got to sign this. They're not quick to do that. So make sure that you get their emails. That's a great one, obviously. And they will check a lot of times, especially if they give you a cell phone number, say, hey, I text. If you text, they'll respond to your text a lot of times. They won't return your, don't even leave a message because it's a waste of your time. So truly, waste of your time. And most of the time, the mailboxes are full. All right, so a couple other things. One of the things you want to make sure, too, if you're in the upper echelons of your school district, you want to make sure you review and revise your policies related to McKinney-Vento students because, again, I just use, for instance, I worked with a colleague of mine who was a longtime principal here for many years, and when I get some of these students come in, you know, who are absent for 10 days or 12 days, whatever it is, and he would say, what am I supposed to do with that? I mean, it doesn't meet our attendance requirement. You know, attendance requirement's 12 days. It's October and they've already been absent 12 days. Tell them they got to repeat the year. And I say, no, part of what we do is we work with them, right? So I said, yeah, I understand how you feel and I get it. You want to try to be fair. But fair is not always equal, especially for these kids. It's not their fault 9 times out of 10 that they're absent for that many days. They've either been all over the place or no stability, no one telling them they need to go to school. You can't put all that onus on the students, even if they're a big bad high school senior. Can't do it. So I always say to them is like, bring them in, waive the attendance, put them under a contract. Say, you know, these are the amount of days that I'm giving you in this period of time. And I always say to make it like a probationary period. They can do 30 days without an absence. You work with them again on the credits because they may have missed some significant amount of school, but they have completed a lot of school too. So if they've completed 3 marking periods and they have this many credits, give them the amount of credits for the 3 marking periods. Don't say, you didn't finish your junior year, so you're going to have to repeat your junior year. And you know what's going to happen. What's the student going to do? He's going to drop out. He's going to quit. And so there begins the cycle of them being in the system. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Because, like I said, their options on their housing is so unstable, you can't even imagine it. And I don't know about you, in my household, I have teenagers, and my house is unstable. And I have a good job, and I have a good family. And it's crazy, right? I mean, I don't know how many of you have been through that, but I can't keep track of who's going where, what, and when, and I can't keep food in the house. I mean, it's impossible, right? It's impossible. But these kids, and the worst thing is, if you watch the New Jersey video, and I highly recommend it, one of the things that jumps out at me when I watch these kids who are homeless, that are living double, tripled up in the family, and the moms and dads, they are trying. They are doing the best they can. And some of them have their own set of disabilities. Think about that. But you watch what the kids are eating in all of the different things. It's a bag of chips. It's a big fruity drink. It's a candy bar, right? Because They can't cook in a hotel. 9 times out of 10, even if they're doubled up, most of the food is not theirs. It's somebody else's food, right? So you're dealing with all of that. So that's why I go back to you with that empathy thing. Just try to imagine your own life as their life. And what do you need to get it better? And a lot of people say, hey, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You got to get this thing done. What's wrong with you? Easier said than done. You know, for me, I love what I do. I wake up and I'm joyous and I come to work every day. You know, if I was probably working at McDonald's and that's the only job where I could get hired, I probably wouldn't be too joyous every day, you know, and trying to make ends meet. So I want you to just think about some of those things. And again, it's not your fault. It's not the fault of the country. A lot of it could be contributed to them, but it's not contributed to the kids, right? The kids did not ask to be born. They were born, and that's the circumstances they live in. So again, I always just keep hammering on that so that you know. All right. So again, we talk about immediate school enrollment. Please, 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 if ever you do, don't turn the kids away. You know, especially if you're trying to judge whether or not they're McKinney-Vento eligible. It may be questionable. It may be. But they're on your doorstep. And the worst thing you can do is say, look, we don't know if you're eligible. You know, I got to work this out with my superintendent. I got to talk to some people. I got to call Chris. I got to call upstate. This is a weird one. I'm not sure where it is. I'll let you know. And as soon as you do that, now you just taking the kids out of the school system. Because here's the thing. They want to be in your school system. If you think they're going to go, you know what, I think they belong in Pennsville, they're not going to go to Pennsville and say, register my kids. They're not going to do that. They're going to wait to see what you have to say. Because if they register them over there, then it's a whole lot of other paperwork to get done. Register the kids, start the dispute process, talk to Pennsville, talk to the liaison over there, talk to your superintendent, get everyone together on board, because sometimes they're tricky. But, you know, if you can register the kids and keep them in there, and again, eventually if it goes to a dispute and it goes to the county will let you know. And generally speaking, if the county lets you know on that, 9 times out of 10, it's not really worth appealing to the state. And just from my experience, seeing the laws that are created from these disputes, if the county rules, you know, stay put, get them in school, so on and so forth, we'll work out the dispute later, do it. Because that's what's going to end up, you know, hanging you. And some of the school districts have been really hammered by the state for not following through on some of those things. So it's always a good idea, and I'm not trying to use threat tactics here. I'm just trying to keep you in mind that the kids come first. If you can get them in the school, that's the best way to go. And again, especially if lacking paperwork, if they don't have the appropriate paperwork, they don't have shot records, they don't have their school records, you know, they don't have things that are necessary to come into the school system, like, you know, the parent doesn't have their ID or some things along those lines. Register the students, get them in. You can get all that information later because the law is very specific about that. It's about getting the kids in as soon as possible. And then we have to use our processes to try to get that information. Especially, I had a question a couple weeks ago about shots and immunization. Kids showed up with no shots. How are we supposed to let them in without any shots? And I said, well, when you did the interview, were the students in another school district? Yes. Where was the school district? Pennsylvania. I said, well, Pennsylvania requires shots for children to be registered for school. So I'll guarantee you, once you get the records from the school, you'll see all the shot records. But I said, if you need them immediately, call up the school, speak to the school nurse. She will have a copy there, or me, whoever it may be. I said, you know, so there's a lot of ways to skin that cat. What happens is a lot of times that we just say, well, you don't have the appropriate paperwork, see you later. And we're not doing the extra step because, again, these same parents, why are they homeless? They have trouble navigating life. And so, again, can't blame the kids for not having the records. Even if you've missed application processes, enroll deadlines, so on and so forth, must enroll. Okay, again, I went over some of these things. Proof of residency or guardianship. This is an important one. This is an NJDOE memo that came out this year. And I had some questions about how it was interpreted. show you the big. Thumbs up. Okay. All right, so this is a PDF, and it is on the website too. But this is an NJDOE memo that came out just this September that basically says affidavits of residency, do not ask for them, because they see it as a barrier to registration. And I'm going to tell you something right now. I was at fault myself. I actually almost, and I came very close to doing it, denying a family the ability to register in our district, because a parent came in, said they were living in a hotel, and then said, but I'm also living with this family over here, X in Piles Grove. And I said, okay, well, I mean, you know, it sounds like you're eligible for services, so on and so forth. I said, why do you go to the hotel? It's to give the family a break. I have these multiple kids, they're a handful, and I know if I stay there with them, there's just an opportunity to get them out, to get me out, and I go to the hotel. I don't know what the real reasons were, but that's what I was told. And I said, okay. I said, well, can you have the family that's in Piles Grove? I said, we have an affidavit that we have our family sign that just, all it says is that you're a resident of Piles Grove and you're living, these family is allowed to live with you. And she says, absolutely not. I can't get somebody to come in and do that. I said, as soon as I try to do that, she's going to tell me to get out. I said, well, you know, I'm sorry, that's been our past practice. That's something that we do. And so she was like, well, I know that person's not going to come. I said, can I do a wellness visit? I said, I'll come to the house. I'm a notary. I'll notarize the papers. All they have to do is sign and present me some documentation that this is your house and this is where the family is living. She's like, okay, I'll ask. She calls me back up and says, guess what? I just got kicked out because she does not want to come in, and she doesn't want to be hassled. She doesn't want to be tied to all of this stuff. She was doing me a favor. So we're back in the hotel. I said, oh, man. I said, well, I didn't want that to happen, you know. So I called up the state and I said, look, this was my situation, and I've always asked for this. Is this something appropriate? And he said, absolutely not. Don't ever ask for that. He said, because it presents a barrier. He said, just exactly what happened is what we don't want to happen to the kids. He says, if you suspect that they're not being truthful, it's on your district to put into place the types of techniques to find out if it's false or it's true. He said, you can do wellness visits. I said, well, I was trying to do a wellness visit. He said, but don't do a wellness visit to actually sign a piece of paper, because that signed piece of paper is going to represent a barrier for a lot of folks who really don't want to be involved. Who are you trying to help? Your school district or the students? And as soon as he said that, I felt terrible. So, fortunately, the parent called me back and said, hey, I found another person to live with. She's willing to sign all of this. If you want to come over, you can come over. And I said, okay, I'll let you know. I had to save face a little bit. But I felt really bad. I did. I felt really bad because it's a process that I've used multiple times and really haven't had an issue with it. But that was the first time I had an issue with it. And then I'm not saying they triggered that memo because of my call, but could be. It could have been. And I'm glad that they put it out to clarify, because a lot of districts say to me, well, no, we're going to still ask for that affidavit of residency. And I said, well, look, I can't stop you from doing what you do. I'm just telling you, this is a DOE memo, and that's from the state. If you choose to violate that and you're found out, there will be consequences, and I don't want anybody to get any consequences. So I share this at this training, because the biggest part here, when it says children and youth experiencing homelessness often do not have documents ordinarily required for school, such as proof of residency, school immunizations, and birth certificates. Many students, especially those living in doubled up situations, will not be able to provide proof of residency. Though proof of residency affidavits may be intended to ensure that only eligible students are able to enroll in a school district, the use of such forms as a requirement for enrollment, and this is the key part, or continued enrollment, constitutes an educational barrier for students who do not reside in permanent living situations. So a lot of times in our school district, for instance, like if it's a regular student and they don't have proof of residency, myself and the registrar might say to them, okay, you know, can you get that for us as soon as possible? So let's just say they don't. Our superintendent then would trigger a letter after 30 days saying, hey, you haven't met the residency requirements so far and proof of eligibility to be in our school district. Can you please provide those as soon as possible? So we give a couple of windows for them to provide that information. However, when it comes to McKinney-Vento eligible students, immediate enroll. Immediate enroll. And again, it's incumbent upon the school district, and a lot of times I'll hear it. I'll hear it from secretaries, I'll hear it from teachers. You know that so-and-so is living in here, but they say they're living over here. Okay, and again, as I said to you, I have a difficult job doing security as well. But I do follow up. I do follow up. And then again, most times, it actually works out in favor of the parent, not the district. So, keep that in mind. And I just want to make sure that I pass that along to you. If you choose to keep doing affidavits of residency, you're in violation of this memo and basically a caveat in the law. Yes, sir.
Kristen, I've emailed you about this before. Now, I've been doing as the liaison since they started the situation. That letter basically is talking about using that when a student is registering to come into the school district without asking for an affidavit. Our process is we get the information and so on and so forth, comes to me, and then I generally do the interview with the parent and so on and so forth. As part of that, because as you know, especially when they're living with somebody else, the law says that you can only talk to certain identified people who are authorized by law. And so I always send out an affidavit to the parent to ascertain the information. I generally use generic terms. And where they were last permanently housed, their last permanent address, and also the date when they actually came to normally live with somebody else out of necessity. And then there's also one for the resident to sign, saying that, yes, they are living with us. And the reason why I do that is because sometimes the information that you're given is not always accurate.
Agreed.
Not always truthful. And in our district, we get a lot of out-of-state homeless students. And of course, we get reimbursement from the state. Sometimes the state will ask, and then they'll ask for a copy of your affidavit that they did that. Now, I've had a couple situations where when the parent was interviewed, they said, no, that's not correct. But then you provide the affidavit that shows, yes, this is the information. But they forgot, they told the same information to the person at the school who was registering. They told us the guidance counselor. And when it gets to me, I just formalize it and so on and so forth.
Right.
So I agree that there's nothing in the regulations, in any of the federal regulations, that say you cannot ask for affidavits.
Agreed.
All right? So even though we may have a memo from the NJDOE saying that that may be a barrier, that's only a barrier for the student when they're registering and when they're enrolling. You can't kick the student out because the parent didn't do the affidavit originally. Generally, we give them somewhere a couple weeks and so on and so forth, and we do the notarization freely. Now, I know some districts have that all on there as part of their registration process. See, I wouldn't do it that way. I do it our particular way. And as I said, I've done thousands of cases. I've never had any difficulty with that and so forth, because when they come in and I tell the people that are registering, I said, obviously the family can't show you proof of residency, especially when they're living with somebody else. I says, however, normally they're living with a relative, and you can provide a utility bill or anything of that nature just to show that they are actually residents. And then, of course, from time to time, we'll send the attendance officer out to check on those particular students and their families. So that's primarily the reason why I do it, is to protect myself.
I understand.
All right? Because I've had that, and I've had a few go through the county office. I'll be honest with you, any of our appeals, we've always won our appeals, even when they've gone up to the commission. So that's why I do it, for my own particular protection. And I have anywhere from 150 to 200 students a year that we identify as being homeless.
Right.
All right. So.
And I'm not disagreeing with you, Dr. Graham. I'm just pointing out this is the information that I was told. And in speaking to the state coordinator, this is the process that I've been asked to make sure that I pass along to liaisons. Again, what you do, if you feel that's appropriate for your district, you know, that's.
But the thing is when we're questioned by the state, they ask for that document.
That's interesting. That's
All
interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they're not. I don't want them to take my word. I don't even notarize.
Right.
I used to do it in the past, but because I'm the one that takes the information so forth, I have other people that are notarizing it. So that's about the fourth or fifth person that individual has told their story to.
Right.
All right. And we're pretty liberal on who's coming into the district and so
Sure.
forth. All right.
Yep. Well, thank you for the input. Appreciate it. Okay, folks. Any questions about this? Any caveats? Okay. Get back to the slideshow. Okay. So again, parental signature is not required for transfer students. These are all FERPA things. Student information may be shared between school districts. That's an important one, especially if you're talking to another liaison and you're talking about an individual student. You have the ability to talk about all the caveats related to that individual student. Speak to parents and youth about the classes the student was in, coursework, special needs. This is all interview information type things. Make sure that you're including all of the stakeholders that are involved with that student, and ensure that each staff at each school are aware of the law and procedures required. Obviously, they have a right to attend their school of origin, which is known as your school of residence. Child or youth attended when permanently housed, or the school in which the child or youth was last enrolled. It includes public preschools and receiving schools. So like for instance, Woodstown is a receiving school district. So students from Alloway, Upper Pittsgrove, and Olmans have the right to attend these schools if they were deemed eligible as homeless in one of those school districts. They may come here to Woodstown. And obviously the local attendance area school is what's known as the School of Temporary Residence. Any public school that non-homeless students who live in the attendance area in which the child or youth is actually living or eligible to attend. So I included this. This is a school decisions checklist. It just gives you 2 sets of questions on either side. And again, I'm not going to click on it because again, it's just one more thing that you can find right here as a tool. But on this side, it gives you questions about school of origin. And this side, it gives you questions about school of temporary residence. This is from the National Council of Homeless Education. And it helps you determine a little bit better what's the best fit. 9 times out of 10, again, it's going to be the school where they have been attending, obviously. But again, like I said, if I had a student, and I had this happen, that wanted to continue attending Woodstown schools and they were living in Wildwood, right? And I just, I'm like, folks, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, that's going to be close to an hour and 45 minutes each way. And the student's 9 years old. I mean, it's not in their best interest. And they live 2 blocks from where the Wildwood school was. So it was a bit of wrangling and discussion with them. But in the end, the mother did see the wisdom, and I said, look, try. I said, let's see how it goes, And I said, I won't say no if you're saying no. You adamantly insist, but just give it a shot. Give it a try. And fortunately, it did work out. That the student ended up staying in Wildwood schools, and it was a good fit. So you will have that happen. A lot of times, that's probably about one of the only real factors that at least I have seen. Maybe you guys have different ones. But sometimes, like if the student is classified special services, and your school district is limited in those special services, there's nothing wrong with talking to the parents saying, hey, you're living in Vineland. Vineland has some of the best resources for kids that are autistic or kids that have Down syndrome. I mean, they had a Vineland training school there at one time that trained all the teachers in New Jersey how to work with special education students. So they have a very good special education program. So that would be where I'm talking to the parent. I would say, that could be a better fit. Let me call for you, and I will talk to the director of special education, and let's have a conversation about it. So I won't just automatically say no to something. I try to bring in all of the stakeholders and support people to try to make the best decision for the child. School of origin means a school that a child or youth attended when permanently housed, or the school in which the youth was last enrolled, including the preschool. All right? So does anyone have any questions on that? Sometimes I get questions about school of origin, school of temporary residence. So in other words, student's been attending Woodstown schools, has been going here, moves to Dr. Graham's district in Pennsgrove. Parent has the choice. Could go to Pennsgrove, could stay here in Woodstown. A lot of times there are relatives on both sides. So I've had sometimes where kids will stay in Penns Grove schools, and sometimes they want to get transported back to here, to Woodstown. This is the district of origin because the kids have been attending school here. District of temporary is now where they're residing right now in Penns Grove. I let him know, hey, I have this child, or he lets me know. Sometimes that happens where I didn't know they moved there. He gets the information, he lets me know, hey, you have a student that's attending your schools that's now living in Penns Grove, you know, and then we talk about all the caveats related to the district of origin and district of temporary residence.
Chris, how long, what is the timeline for that? Does that go for the, like, when they're determined homeless, for 12 months, a full year, or until the end of that school year?
No, 12 months.
12 months.
Yeah, so somebody came in yesterday, November 5th,
Right.
and I registered them and I let him know. It'd be 1 year from that time, and I'd say to him, after 1 year's time, they would now become your fiscal responsibility. But I think every county, pretty much that I've seen, maybe even in the state, has a reciprocal relationship, which is basically saying that I may have your child, but we're not going to charge you for tuition and transportation. Now, I've always said that probably it would be better if they said tuition maybe, but not transportation, because transportation can be a huge burden on a school district. And it could work out for you, or it could not work out for you, all depends. But you have exactly 1 calendar year from that time before it becomes a responsibility. But it does not mean homelessness ends for the child. Just keep that in mind. That was something, again, that originally when I took over as the liaison, our district was confused about because they believed that that 1 year's time meant that the children were no longer considered homeless. They're now this other district's issue and homelessness stops. They're now permanently housed. But again, I've said, well, think about it, if they're in a hotel or a motel, you know, would that be considered permanent housing? Yes, sir.
Just to let you know that the state identifies, especially for the funding issue, they use 180 days as for a full year. And they generally start that day as the first day the student physically appeared and attended your school district. So the kid could have moved there in July. So instead of the preceding or the following July, that would be a year. But normally the state will use your whatever date you use in September as your starting date, say September 6th of this year. So then the year determination will be December 7th, 2019.
Right.
That would be the year, even though they physically were in a home or in a shelter or whatever in July. That's normally the way the state calculates.
Right.
The 180
and again, you know, as far as, you know, making sure they enroll, I haven't, maybe you run into this, I haven't had anyone say to me, well, you know, because I'm in and then and I came in September 9th, I want to start again at Woodstown schools rather than start over there. Most of the parents will just change the registration in the summer, at least my experience. So, but I agree with you. Unaccompanied youth, again, just going over this is an important one because you may have this in your district. Great care must be given to awareness of signs of youth human trafficking. So again, this can be a problem. And you know, there's off of the state's website and also the NCHE, they have a tutorial on that, things and signs to look for when it comes to human trafficking. So just make sure you're aware of that. Liaisons must help unaccompanied youth choose and enroll in a school after considering the youth's wishes. And you must revise and accommodate unaccompanied youth and comply with the McKinney-Vento Act. I think that's all pretty self-explanatory. One of the biggest things I think is important to know too, and you know, you can read all of this, but I want to make sure I put a link to this, and this is really for our superintendents that may be in the room and building principals. Option 2 in New Jersey, if you're not familiar with it, is just, as I want to just use literal terms, another way to skin a cat. That when you have some of these unaccompanied youth that may come into your district who may be a runaway or had a problem with mom, as I said, in Triton schools, but is now part of Alloway schools and now becomes a Woodstown student. You know, you can look at a lot of ways to work with that student under option 2. Because what New Jersey said is that there are a variety of ways in which students can meet graduation requirements. So if you click on that link, that'll take you to the DOE website. And there are a variety of examples which you can use in your school district to help students earn credit. That's the biggest thing, is earning credit. And I say to a lot of district principals, especially that are in high schools, work with the kids when it comes to the credits and attendance policies. Because that's the most important thing, because I'm just telling you, the barrier comes up when you try to fit the square peg in the round hole. Because when those students come in with all those absenteeisms, they didn't finish this market period, so they don't have credits for the year and start over the school year, they quit. They always do. But if your district can start, and if they haven't, an alternative high school, a lot of these types of kids that are McKinney-Vento could fit really well in an alternative high school because they can earn credits quicker. They can take college classes, earn credits that way, get them on the road to training. They can earn credits by interning. There's a lot of different ways that they can earn credit. A lot of times they even say, with maybe your district policy, you don't have a policy in there that covers like health and PE. They must be in their health and PE classes. But if they're participating in some type of sport, even if it's an outside sport, if they're committed and every day they're going to practice and every day they're training and working out and so on and so forth, you can use that as a way to count towards PE credit, believe it or not. So take a look at that in option 2. It's really good to know about. Again, unaccompanied youth, I'm not going to go over that anymore, but do McKinney-Vento Act requirements apply to children attending preschool? And the answer is yes. Even if you have a paid for preschool, that those children are able to attend that school district's preschool and to gain transportation. Again, because in McKinney-Vento Act, they talk about Head Start programs. And all of those programs, they realize that they've done the statistical analysis on the kids that start when they're 3 and 4 year olds in school and their ability to maintain track towards graduation. And the statistics bear out that kids that start the preschool programs have a much higher tendency, even when they're in this transient lifestyle of attending school and then eventually graduating. So please make sure if you have questions about that, give me a call. I'll help guide you through that. Again, we talked about receiving schools. Duration of school of origin rights, which we talked about a little bit. Right to attend the school of origin for the duration of homelessness. So if your child, and I've heard this from other districts, they've been designated as homeless for 5 years. That could be. That could be. Well, they've been living in the same residence during that time. That still could be. It still could be. And though you may judge it and think that somebody's taking advantage of it, you got to work it out. You got to figure it out. If you think somebody's taking advantage of it, then you talk to the superiors of the school district and you say, hey, look, I have this group, they've been homeless for 5 years, they've been living in the same school district, living in the same residence, and I'm not sure why they would still be considered homeless. We have proof that they're on utility bills. We have proof that they're contributing towards a mortgage payment. Things of that nature helps back up your case. And in those cases, if you speak to the parents, a lot of times they may just acquiesce and say, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, we're permanently housed. And then other times you'll have them saying, no, we still can be kicked out at any time. This is not my residence. This goes back and forth. So you have to weigh out the pros and cons on that. All right, in any case in which a family becomes homeless between academic years or during an academic year. So again, as we said, if they become homeless during the school year, they can continue in that school district. Remainder of the academic year, if they become permanently housed. This is another one I ran into quite a few times over the last couple weeks with training, where districts, when they became permanently housed in a district, they said, okay, you got to go attend the other school district. And a lot of times families will just listen, and that's what they will do. But again, the best interest of the student is to leave them in their district of origin, at least for the remainder of that school year. That's important. Students do not need to register in a district which they are temporarily residing if not attending school in that district. So obviously, it's a reportable thing. Again, as Dr. Graham even noted, there are some things that are in the McKinney-Vento grant or not in the McKinney-Vento grant that probably should be in there. I have a responsibility to talk to Stu if I know he has a family that is mine living in his school district and they're attending our schools here. I want to make sure that I let him know. Is it a direct requirement? No, it is not. It is not. It should be, but to be, you know, again, we're all supposed to be friends and working with each other in this room. And if I don't tell him about it and then I say, hey Stu, guess what? Tomorrow marks 1 year that this family's been living in your school district and you had no idea, that doesn't build good relationships between all of us, and it doesn't help the kids out at all. So honestly, like I said, the state, and I have shared multiple times all the homeless liaison lists. If you're a liaison in a room, if you're not, certainly speak to your liaison. It's real easy to get the information. Actually, on our website, I've delineated out, using your example, the Cape May liaisons, the Salem, and the Cumberland liaisons are on there. So if you know kids living in another school district, please give them an FYI. Notification to school district, which I just talked about. Again, 12 months. Students are considered deemed domicile. However, the homelessness can continue, just financial responsibility shifts now to that district. That's especially important if you are working with someone who's maybe not in your county. And I have that, you know, so we have students that are the responsibility of someone that's in Cumberland County. It's really up to the superintendents in the BA's office to work that out. I don't get involved. I tell them where they're at, and if they choose to seek recompense, they can. If not, they can use the same negotiations that they do with mostly all of the different counties. And that can work out, like I said, in your favor or against you. I would imagine if you have a higher student homeless population, it would probably be against you. If you have a lesser, then it's for you. All right, so these are some of the criteria to consider. Obviously, you know, we want to make sure that we're working towards the student's best interest. Okay, and then I just talked about this deeming domiciled. Make sure that you're talking to the send-receive districts. Make sure they enrolled where they're domiciled. You know, especially after that one school year, after they're deemed domiciled. So they can still remain homeless, but you know, now that Stu knows about those kids 1 year later, now they're part of his reporting responsibility. And the exception is domestic abuse shelters after 12 months deemed domiciled, but the state becomes fiscally responsible. Again, every shelter that I spoke to, no one will keep someone for 12 months, and they just don't have the room. So generally speaking, within 90 days, they try to help them find a better place to get on their feet. Transportation must be provided to the school of origin at the request of the parent or guardian, or in the case of an unaccompanied youth, at the request of the local liaison. So if an unaccompanied youth comes in and they're not sure, because remember, you're kind of making some decisions for them what's in their best interest. Because a lot of times, especially if they're migrant, and they don't speak the language, the barrier definitely is the language. Even when you have someone helping to interpret, a lot of the language we use as liaisons is very content specific, I want to say, so it can be difficult for them to understand. And I've had, you know, guardians say, no, you know, I'll take care of the transportation, and then the kids coming late to school all the time because they don't understand when school starts, when it ends, so on and so forth, and then I'll backtrack and say, probably best we just provide transportation if you can make sure they're out at the bus stop. Then you know, they're coming here and here's the time they'll get off. Based on the amended definition of school of origin under ESSA, the school of origin transportation rights extend to public preschools and receiving schools, which I had mentioned earlier. Must LEAs continue to provide transportation to and from the school of origin for formerly homeless students who have become permanently housed? Yes. LEAs must continue to provide transportation to and from the school of origin when the children are considered permanently housed or deemed domiciled. Okay. Questions on that? All right, so these are a lot of musts and should not and so on and so forth, but this is really good for transportation coordinators to just look at. These are all interpretations of McKinney-Vento that have to do with transportation. And so a lot of it, again, is about just trying to work out for the best interest of the student. So I'll give you, for instance, even if you know somebody's on a route and they come into your district. So again, I'm going to pick on Stu again. So let's just say Stu has a student that's been on a special needs bus, you know, that we've been providing here in town, and now they're Stu's responsibility or whatever. Our transportation coordinator can talk to their transportation coordinator and say, well, look, they've been working with this bus driver. The bus driver is very familiar with the student, knows the child's disabilities. It's probably best that we just remain with that driver would you be willing to pay for that route, and we'll just continue to use our services to provide for that student? That's a great way to fix that issue without any real disruption for that student, right? So you can think on your feet a little bit about those things. Most times, districts will work with you. They will help you figure out the best way to support the student. All right, so again, don't cancel an existing route. I actually had somebody say that to me last time. Yep, and they're domiciled, so we just ended the route. And the kids stopped showing up to school. I said, well, you got to talk to the other transportation coordinator. If you want to cancel the route and it becomes their responsibility, that's fine. But you got to talk to them and let them know that they need to do that. Because again, the liaison is going to try to coordinate all of that. But as the transportation coordinator, you're going to know the ins and outs. You're going to know that bus transportation coordinator for the other school district or how they work their system. We don't know. So that's always in the best interest. Okay, so transportation. So I get a lot of questions on this one as well. So what if it's a weird situation and we can't get a route to that particular area? So the liaison can try to work some magic with that parent and say, look, it's really difficult for us to get a route. And sometimes money does become a factor. So let's just say that particular route is extremely expensive, you know, and I'm not saying you would be off the hook, because you're not. But you could say to the parent, hey, if you provide transportation for that, we'll provide you gas money. You could do that. And that would be reimbursable through the grant that I have, up to a certain amount of money, but I couldn't cover it all. But it would save your district a lot of money just paying the gas money. And that goes back to some of the questions that I said, like even with housing, right? If you have an expensive bus route, let's just say the bus run, you have to create a bus run for that student because they're homeless, probably going to be homeless for the rest of the year. It's $200 a day to run that one bus run back all the way out to wherever they're living, all the way back to us. That's $1,000 a week, right? Times it by 40 weeks. That's $40,000 in transportation. And I said, well, wouldn't it be better if the district then said, hey, look, we'll pay for 1 month's rent and we'll pay for your security deposit to help you get in permanent housing right here in the district and the kids can walk. You know, I mean, that's a possibility. I don't know where districts sit with that. Every time I bring it up, they kind of are like, yeah, I hear you. I don't want to give handouts to people. I get it. So but then you're stuck for $40,000 in transportation rather than $3,000 for an apartment fee. That's a one-time fee, and you're done. So again, just some things to propose. You can use approved van or taxi services as necessary. Those are possibilities. And again, I said reimburse. You can pursue interagency. You know, if you know another school district, like Gloucester County School District does a lot of bus runs in a lot of places. So you could work with them. Hey, I already have a run going out that way. I'm not going to charge you a bus rate. I'll charge you a student rate. You know, it's $30 a day. So now you went from $40,000 to $150, you know, a week. So you can try to work out those things. Okay, provide transportation. Yeah. Preschool, we just mentioned that earlier. Just make sure that you know that, even if you don't have busing for that typical preschool. I mean, we ran into that in our school district, but it is a requirement. And like I said, I try not to make those decisions in a vacuum because I scratch my head. I'm like, I don't know. If we don't have transportation that normally runs, do we have to provide it? And the answer is yes. Okay, as we get down into some of the other nitty-gritties here, these are some of the forms that I have for you. And again, they're all available on the website. They are all available in the PowerPoint presentation. The McKinney-Vento determination flow chart is from the state of New Jersey. It's right on their website. You can look at it, and that's like, you know, if this, then that. So that'll tell you a little bit about, you know, eligibility of services. Because if after conducting best interests, you determine that it's not in their best interest to attend the school of origin or the school requested by the parent, the district must provide the parent, guardian, or unaccompanied youth with a written explanation of the reasons for its determination. I know a couple districts got in trouble for this, just kind of denied services and didn't give a written explanation why. And some parents aren't savvy and they'll let it go and they'll do their thing. But some parents are savvy and they look it up and they say, well, wait a minute, you never provided us with written notification. So some of that I'm trying to circumvent for you here because I pulled from our county, and this was something I think Celeste may have gotten or pulled. This is a determination checklist from the executive county. So these are things that they're going to ask you for if there's a dispute. If you say, no, they're not deemed for eligible services, at the same breath as a homeless liaison, if you say that, you need to also say, but, you know, I am not the be-all and be-all. I can make mistakes. Here is a dispute resolution form that you can fill out. I'm going to come back to you and send you some information that basically why I determined you not eligible for services. If you want to appeal, you can appeal to the executive county superintendent on my determination. And then this checklist is what you need to give them, a copy of that. And then there are going to be some things in there that you need to provide for those families as well if you deem them not eligible. So make sure that you know that. And I do everything on Google Docs, everything. So everything that's on Google Docs that you click on, if you're not familiar with it, all you ever have to do is click on the document, and on the left side it says File. If you make a copy, it brings up the same form. You can rename it however you want to rename it, and then you can type in all the information that you want and print it however you want to give that out. But I also have it in Word if you're more familiar with Word and more comfortable. Okay, again, I go back to immediate enrollment. Even if there's a dispute, you disagree, so on and so forth, enroll the child. Don't turn them away because they won't go to school. Students receive all services until they're deemed not eligible. So if, you know, like I said, if there's a dispute, you deem them not eligible, and they say, where am I supposed to go, so on and so forth. Well, we're going to enroll you, but while this is in dispute, we're going to go ahead and you know, enroll your children until we can figure this out. They may say, we don't want to dispute it. Okay, we're just going to go to the other school district. And you've done your job. You've done your job. If they say, and I would write it down, date and time, they verbally say they are not going to dispute my eligibility determination. States and school districts must implement procedures, and again, we talked about removing barriers, and then this goes back to, again, credit, credit, credit. Give it in full or partial for work completed at any prior school. So again, they were missing for half of a school year. Could you say they need to repeat sophomore year? Yes, you could. Likelihood of them repeating sophomore year? 0. Give them the credit for that half a year. Come up with an option 2 for the other half. Enroll them. Now they're in their junior year. We have online courses for you for your second half of credits. So, and that you may come to me and say, hey Chris, I don't have an online program or anything for them. And I would say, hey, I can reimburse you out of some of our tuition instruction grant. Right? So we can work it out. Again, for guidance counselors, college preparation and readiness, it is part of our requirements to make sure that we are telling them, make sure there are fee waivers in place through guidance for any types of tests that help them get into college or some other type of continued education. Again, you can visit NCHE for more information. And again, any services must be comparable, including transportation. So I get sometimes questions about activities after school. Is it a requirement that we provide transportation for those students who want to be in our Gifted and Talented OM program, Odyssey of the Mind? And the answer is maybe. That's the answer. And I know it's a terrible answer. Because sometimes, if you have the ability to do so, if you've already had an activity bus that's been running for, say, something else, one of your athletics programs or something like that, you're going to need to include it on this side. The good side is that you can use Title I funds for this purpose. McKinney-Vento says that any school district, even if you're not using some of the grant funds, you need to set aside a certain amount of Title I funds to help with transportation and making things comparable for students. So let's just say you're not a Title I school. You don't have a large population of students on free and reduced lunch. You still should set aside a comparable amount. So let's say you have 3 students, and these 3 students want to be in an activity. If you have Title I funds available, then it's probably a good idea to try to set up a bus route or some other transportation. Again, you can work with a parent. If the parent has transportation, say to them, hey, and we want your kids to participate in this activity. Yes, sir.
Chris, just to let you know that the old rule was that you had to set aside homeless funds for those schools that were not Title I schools. However, a new regulation came out that it's now all schools, you have to be Title I or not.
Correct. Yep. Yep. That's a great point. That's what I'm trying to say is that even if you're not designated as a Title I school, you have to set aside comparable funds to support your McKinney-Vento kids. And again, the last thing you want to do is discourage the kids from participating in school. Why? Because it's the outside activities and all of that that a lot of times help the kids decide to get out of bed and come to school, especially for high school students. If they're involved in athletics, that is a key factor in keeping them in school and doing well academically. So if you can help sponsor something like that, you should. Again, you can work with parents, transportation, even if a parent says, you know, hey, can you help me with a bus pass? You know, the kids are going to live in this hotel. We have a bus that goes right there, and there's a bus stop in Woodstown. Yeah, absolutely. Pay for it. Give me your receipts. I'll get you your money back. All right? So, and you would have to do that in your district, obviously, come up with those funds. But you could say to me, Chris, here are the receipts for copies of the receipts for the bus passes. It totaled $100 this month. Can you reimburse us? Yes, I can. I can do that. So that's a way to get the kids involved in activities. Again, it's not mandatory in the code that you provide transportation activity. It's not mandatory. But if a kid comes up and they want to participate, try not to put the barrier in place. And I made a little link to this Title I information memo, and that's exactly what Dr. Graham was talking about, was that comparable funds in there. So again, if you need to, talk to your BAs, talk to your superintendents, so on and so forth, especially if you know you've been limiting kids participating in outside activities because you know you're not going to be able to pay for an activity bus. Okay, so this is a homeless scenario, just real quick, but two major links. If you're a new homeless liaison or even an old one, if you haven't visited, Homeless Liaison Toolkit, it is an extensive document, but it's well worth scanning over. It has a lot of information. A lot of things that I went over today were the salient bullet points that we mostly run into, most of the big questions. McKinney-Vento guidance, that's the website on the state of New Jersey that you can use to access any of this information from a state's point of view. So, Cherie left her apartment where she lived with her 3 kids due to domestic abuse, staying at a shelter a few miles away. The twins were going to a Head Start program operated by the school district near their old apartment, while the older one was attending a high school nearby. She wants to keep her sons in the same Head Start program because they were happy there. Is she able to do that? Yeah. Yeah, of course, right? Because that's what we talked about. You know, the best interest of the child is keeping them in the school of origin where their placement is. She's worried about her abusive ex showing up. She's also not sure she should get them, how she could get them back and forth to the program. Is she entitled to transportation? Yes. Yes, she is. And as a liaison, you're going to say that to her. Well, I understand how you feel. Hey, we can get you a bus. We can make sure the kids are there. Only thing we ask is that there be someone, especially if they're preschool, someone to put them on the bus. You know, so say those things in the best interest of the child. You don't want the kids standing out there at a bus stop at 6:50 in the morning by themselves. If they're preschool students, you want to see that they're engaged. All right, so the other side of that is it sucks about the abusive ex showing up at the school. So what can you do as a liaison in that case?
I'll tell you what I do. I email all the secretaries or the counselors and the administrators and such individual. They come to your school. They're not to have access to this child, and so on and so forth. And if they do, contact us immediately or local police department.
That's right.
Also notify the parent.
That's right. Great information. And sometimes what will happen is that it'll be a dispute. So let's say it's a dispute. You know, that she's saying the ex is abusive, but the ex is saying, what? No, that's not true. I want to see my child. But you got to do what's in the best interest of the kids, as Dr. Graham pointed out. You're going to let everybody know for right now, and you're going to call that parent, and you're going to say to them, for right now, this is the report that we have. And we're going to have to limit your access to your child at our schools. All right? And make sure that everybody's on your side. Your superintendent, your head of security, or whoever else you need to make sure they're on your side. And then you're going to say, when court documentation comes in one way or the other, then we will make the adjustments. But for right now, we're trying to act in the best interest of the child. So that's what our responsibilities are, regardless of whether or not we're a homeless liaison. But if you're getting this information in your interview with the parent or guardian, you have to make sure that you're notifying people. Don't let that rest on your desk, because that could catch you. Yes,
but
sir.
also, of course, every school is supposed to have contact information for the child. So if that particular person is not listed on that contact, the schools automatically know that that person is not that.
Absolutely. Yep.
They're not there.
Yep. And your student reporting system, as he alluded to, a lot of times we have a little asterisk that'll go on there that there's some type of information. You click on it, opens up and says, you know, no contact rule or whatever it may be. Just make sure you're following up on those things with the appropriate personnel. Shireen is worried about the older one too. Will she be safe if she stays in the same school? What if she transfers to a new school? Will her credits transfer? So the real question on that one is, we just discussed that part. Will the credits transfer? Yes. Okay. There's no high school that we're not going to take probably in the state of New Jersey. And even when we get them from out of state, we try to, you know, the guidance counselors work their magic. And they try to figure out where the best alignment is. You know, course titles change and so on and so forth. So, you know, you could say that to the parent to reassure them. Like, look, you know, we're going to try to do the best for your child. If they stay here, obviously, we're going to make sure that we do all the security practices we need to make sure your child is safe, not letting anybody take her away. Number two is if you decide to go to the other school, yeah, we're going to make sure that those credits transfer and they line up to what she needs to do at her next school. And then it makes their choice a little bit easier, knowing that we're going to work with them with the credit persons. Okay, forms for Region 8. So this is as we get to the last particular things, and it looks like a bunch of hodgepodge all over the place. Again, if you go to our website, all these forms are just delineated out, nice and easy for you to use. All right, so if you are looking, and I got a little bit of clarification on the state on this, if you are looking to try to access some of the services from the grant, the best thing to do is to provide me with this information. If you have such a low homeless population of 1 or 2 kids and you don't think that you're going to need any supporting grant monies and things, it's not a requirement that you send me the children's information. At least that's what I've been told. So, but I would highly suggest you do, because I have a real easy way for you to do it. If you go to any one of these 3 forms right here, okay? These forms are all in Google Forms. So it's a matter of clicking them open and then going through the process. So I'm going to give you, the first one is the eligibility form. All right, so it looks like this, and it starts out at the top. And what you're doing is I'm trying to streamline it for you. So in the past, you might have had 3, sometimes 4 different forms to fill out, and there's some redundancy on the form, whether it be names, SID number, date of birth, parent information, whatever it may be. I put all of that information from those 3 forms on one Google form. Make it real easy. You fill out this information for you to start. You're the liaison, your email address, your name, your county, your district. That automatically allows this form, once it's complete and you hit submit, it will go directly to your email. When it goes to your email, it's going to look just like the form, except it's all going to be filled out. It's going to have all your information that's in there. So if you need to keep records, you can do like I do. I usually move it into a folder for my electronic records, and I refer to it if I need it. If you're a tangible person, you must have the paper in your hand. Print it. And then some people have said to me, well, how does a parent sign it? Just like any other form you do online. If you sign it, there's a caveat on there. By you putting your signature in here indicates that you agree to the terms of this eligibility status. That counts. I've already verified that. If you don't feel comfortable doing that and you want to see the signature, print it out, have the parent sign it. But as soon as you hit submit, it goes to you in your email and it populates a spreadsheet for me. You don't have to send me anything. You fill out this form, it automatically comes to me. And it fills out every line that I needed to do for accountability purposes. So let's just say you want to provide transportation for your McKinney-Vento kids for an activity or whatever. It's a field trip to do a career fair. It's going to be $500. Can you help support it, Chris? Yes, I can. Here's the McKinney-Vento eligibility forms. for these particular students, I just look them right up in my database and they're there, no problem. So then when I go to tie that grant funding to eligible students, I have it right there. I put a little note on the side. Pensgrove used this funding towards field trip for these 5 students to attend the career fair on such and such a date. So I always have an electronic record of it. If you are not comfortable in filling this out, I have all these forms redone on Google Forms. So I'm going to give you, for instance, how this would look. So I'm the liaison, Christopher Snyder. County. That drop down's not working. District is WPRSD. I hit next. Okay, now I go to the parent guardian information, and if you noticed in that first part of the information, there's little red asterisks. That means it's a requirement. You can't move forward without putting your information in. Why? Because if you don't, then the next thing you know, you're not going to get a copy of the email with your form already done for you. So that's what we're trying to do, is eliminate a lot of paperwork. Parent guardian information. Are you in a temporary living arrangement? Yes, I am. Is this temporary living arrangement due to loss of housing and economic hardship? Yes. Why did I put that information in there? It's on the first eligibility form on the National Council of Homeless Education. So like I said, I took some of the best practices from a lot of different forms and put them in there. All right, parent's name, Mary Little Lamb. All right, if there are 2 parents, put them in there. The more contacts you have, the better. 1 Student Way. Former address, 2 Student Way. And then obviously I would put in a phone number for each of the people. Key component, email addresses. I think that's one of the most essential things you'll have. And why? If you send me the email addresses, because there are a lot of things that support these parents through these outside agencies. I don't have their emails. I can't possibly pick up the phone and have you call or me call all of the families just to notify them of a certain event. Usually I get a flyer in the email. Now I create a mass email list. I send it out to all of your parents. I send it out to you to distribute to your parents. You get their emails, you can create your own group lists. It gets information out there and easy. Will they delete it? Most times, yes, but something might spark their interest and they may attend, because it could be saying, hey, come for a free meal to this family night activity. A lot of times that gets parents out. So you put an email address in any of those. Here's a key component, date identified student homeless, and in transition, month, date, and year. Current living situation, it's a drop down. You picked one of these, and it, we're gonna say hotel, motel. Student services needed. So you're sitting here with a computer, just going through this, interviewing the parent. What kind of services? Well, she's really struggling at home. Okay, we can get you some counseling. She's really struggling in class. How about some tutoring? Do you need any book bags? Yes, we need school supplies. Do you need meals, transportation? All of these things you're putting as a checkbox, just letting me know that you're either providing some of those services, or you may follow up with me and say, hey, they talked about counseling services. Is there anything you could do to help? And then one of the things that I'm doing through this grant is I'm hiring 3 counselors, 1 for each county. So if you're a counselor or interested in that, licensed social work, there's going to be some funding that's available for an individual in each one of the counties to work with some of these kids, because our guidance counselors honestly are overtaxed, exhausted. So we're looking for people that are working with some of these more difficult families, because I'm going to be honest with you, it's the house visit that you go to, it creates a wellness check, but you're also saying, how can I help you? And these counselors are going to be able to say, let me work on it. And then they might talk to me, and I know outside agencies, they know outside agencies. It's just another buffer, another person to help with some of the services for parents. All right? And then this is your statement of circumstances. This is where you do your narrative. Parents lost economic housing due to property was sold, they foreclosed on the property, whatever it may be, but they had to leave in a hurry. So now they're homeless. And then here is the first thing. You verify, as long as they're eligible for services, I give my permission for the McKinney-Vento Act and the homeless liaisons to be able to provide services, transport, if necessary, all these other related services. So this is the little caveat that helps me provide your school district services funding through the grant to help support these kids. So yes, I'm absolutely willing for you to get me some counseling. I'm going to go ahead and put my electronic signature here. and this is a requirement, and I'm going to hit next, and now the student information comes up. So now you can just interview the student. The one bad thing about Google Forms is they don't have add to menus. So, and like I said at the beginning of this training, I'm going to build in the grant some monies to build an actual real tool that we can use, not a free tool, a real tool that'll collect this data much more simply than a Google form. However, in this particular case, the most students I've ever seen registered at once, in my experience working with other liaisons, has been 7. You could have something that exceeds that and say to me, okay, I need to add more boxes. This is the only drawback on the form. You go through all of this. They have 3 kids. You hit next, right? So you hit next. It took you through another student. You hit next. And you hit another student and the 3rd student, and now you're done. But unfortunately, you got to click through 4 more because there's no way for me to put a drop down. So I just put 4 more. You just click right through it. So if you only have 3 students, fill it out for the 3, click next until you get to a different page. Where this is the last part, is just a little bit for you. So, hey, are they eligible based upon the information you got? The answer is yes. District of responsibility. Well, whose responsibility is it for the students? Where are they living? Where have they been living? So on and so forth. Put in what you think it is. And then this is just a checkbox for you. These won't go to your individuals, but these are the people who I usually email when I deem somebody homeless. All right, so I'll put the email to liaison where the district is residing, school of current attendance, building level administration, guidance counselor, business office, transportation coordinator, registration, regional program administrator, myself, and then other. If there's somebody else that should be on the list, you can click yes and then type in information or not. And then once you hit submit, that's the last button. What the heck? Stickers. It says select all the squares with stairs. Okay. Oh, that's tricky. I wonder if these are included. Yeah. Okay. I'll click them all. Oh, I'm sorry. This was required. Okay, so it's sent. Now I go to my inbox. And it's not there. You're a liar out of me. It must not have made it there yet. I'm not sure why. I promise you on the other, there it is. All right, so this is what would come up in your email, right? So it's the same form that I just showed you, but now you have all the blanks filled out, okay? All the way through your form. So, you know, for your information, you know, if you don't see it all, you just hit view entire message, and then you can print it out and do your signature from there. The nice thing about this is that if I want to send this to you know, my transportation coordinator or whatever, I'm just going to hit their address in here, and I'm going to type a little blurb. This student is deemed eligible for McKinney-Vento, and here's the information. I just would do a short blurb to summarize a little bit of it, but here's the official documentation that I have for that student. They are in need of this X, Y, and Z. So hopefully that makes it a little bit easier for you. I've had some districts in Salem, Cumberland, and Cape May counties using it. They really like it, and it's been working out pretty good. So again, you know, that's one way to report the students. The second way, obviously, is, is these other forms. And again, these are just the forms that you've probably been using. They're just modifications of Bridgeton's forms that they put out. I just put Woodstown Posgrove information on it. They're all in there. You could do the same thing if you're familiar with Google Docs. click on it, make a copy, fill it out, share it with me, or you could print it and scan it and send it to me. I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, whatever you're comfortable with. I think the Google form is my best preference because it populates everything for me and there's no labor that's involved in it, but it's up to you. These are some other pieces. Notification to District of Responsibility, and Dr. Graham, you'll be proud to know that I used yours as a basis, actually one you sent to me. This is like when you say to me, like, hey, I have a student that's one of your students, you know, living in my school district, coming to my school, here you go. So I just kind of tweaked it up, put my name at the top, and then I just use this as a general letter. So again, this is just a way to officially document that somebody is, you know, in your school district, or, you know, you're working with the liaison and it's their, you know, student that's really in their district. So you're able to use a letter to notify them that, hey, they're going to be your responsibility in a year from now. Yes, sir.
Chris, just to let you know that this subject has been brought up with the state in the past. They were supposed to come out with a regulation that people are supposed to notify that, hey, we have a student that's living in your district. However, they're still attending school in our district and so on and so forth. So, because there's some liaisons that don't bother to do that at all, and then all of a sudden, we say, you know, what's going on here?
Right, show up on our doorstep.
In Salem County, we generally try to keep ourselves,
right,
you know, informed, but always, sometimes we're not even informed.
That's right.
And also, there used to be a 48-hour determination when you're supposed to notify the other school district that they're in there as well.
Yeah.
It's not when you get around to it.
Right.
Because sometimes there's an eligibility or a financial or a question that they may provide and so forth. But also I want to say, when we were sending information to Bridgeton, I used to send out an Excel spreadsheet, a listing of all the students, their obviously their grade, when they start and so on and so forth. So I saw the form here. I think that's a lot of work. But I already have that information, and I already do that. Do you want us to send
that would be fine
on a monthly basis?
Yep.
Because that's normally.
Yeah, if you're already doing something in a spreadsheet format, again, I'm not looking to make your lives more difficult. That's what I don't want to do. If it's easier for you to continue the way that you're doing it, as long as I get the information that I need, you may not have all of the information that I ask for, and then I would just ask you, can you give me the additional information?
All right, that way I have a complete listing of all students on one particular sheet as opposed to going to individual sheets.
Whatever works for you. Whatever works for you. Again, your level of tolerance is my level of tolerance. You know, we'll make it work. So if your current practices work for you, then do what you're doing.
I think, Chris, certainly thank you for the ability to send it what's best for each person, but I really love the way you streamlined this as far as, you know, for your forms. I think it's much more helpful being a former LEA, very helpful for you as you're trying to get information, especially since we are so now, the requirement for the data is so much greater. So I really thank you for creating at least this streamline, not only to help yourself, but also to help us as well.
Yeah, well, and again, like I said, whatever works for you. And again, Dr. Graham, like I said, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make it easier for folks because as Celeste just said, there are probably things that you are collecting data on that may not be all the requirements now, because I did get more that, hey, in order for these grant fundings, you're going to need to provide this additional information, so on and so forth. So I tried to include that on every part of the form. But again, if you want to go back to just even if you're doing what you're doing, look at the eligibility forms that I created like in Google Docs. Just click on those and just make sure that you're collecting that information that's in there. Like again, my secretary and I, we will figure it out, you know, if that's problematic for you. All right, last couple things. I promise I'm going to wrap up. About 20 minutes over, I apologize. The last couple things are this confirmation form is just something for your own benefit. If you click on that, you'll see it's just a benefit form that came from the National Council. So you'll see what I mean once you click on it. But for the sake of time, a couple of things. I sent out a needs assessment to all of you in the summertime because, again, I am now the program administrator for Region 8. There is a sub-grant that is basically being funded by the federal government through the state of New Jersey, through Gloucester County Special Services School District, and then to me. And then that is supposed to be disseminated out amongst the 3 counties as best we can, as fair as I can. And generally speaking, it's first come, first serve. I will do my best to support whatever it is that you're trying to do within the maximum of the program. But again, I like things, again, without all of the paperwork. So there is a funds request form that's really attached to the needs assessment. So when you filled out the needs assessment, some people wrote back like, hey, I have no program, I have a low number of homeless students in my district, I really can't see where we're not providing the support that's needed for the kids, so you don't have to worry about us, kind of thing. And then I have other people that said, hey, I run this program in the summer, it's for our at-risk kids, we invite all of our McKinney-Vento kids to be a part of it, can you help support that? And I said, that's why I asked for it in the summer before I write the grant. Because if you're thinking about a program, and let's just say it's going to take 2 teachers at X number of dollars, this many hours. I need a bus, I need supplies, I need a para, those things. If you tell me what you want to do for the program, and we hash it all out and we figure it out, I'll write it right into the grant. That's the easiest and safest way for you. So like for instance, that's what Joanna did with me this summer. She wrote a Super Saturday Club program and I allocated the funds in the grant for her program. And that's why I sent out the needs form. So that's where we met about that. Really no one else came to me about programmatic issues. So what then I do, because I'm not getting direct programmatic issues, I create general fund from that fund. So in other words, I set aside $45,000 for instructional needs. So if you have 100 students that are in Pennsgrove and 15 of them really need tutoring after school, and we have a program in place, but these particular students need the additional help. I'd like to hire one more teacher for an hour every other day. Can you help me? The answer is yes, I can. That's something you have to talk to me about now. But if you align it, because probably somewhere around April, probably early May, I'll be sending out that needs assessment again. Do you want to talk about a program? Do you want to offer something to your kids? I'm willing to do that. I'll drive to you. I'll come to you. We'll sit down and we'll talk about what that could be. Because I would rather start trying to do that to encumber the money. So the first issue that always comes to my mind with grant money that's generally funded is that there'll be some give back. I hate giving back grant money. It like really burns me up. So I want to try to spend every last dollar of it if possible. And I realize I want to try to make it last throughout the year, so I'm trying to look at systematic and programmatic things. But again, if there's an extraordinary thing, you get a student that comes into your district who comes from Honduras, can't speak a word of English. You don't have an ESL program. He's the only kid that speaks Spanish in your area. You know, do you have a Spanish teacher? Yes, I do. Okay. Develop a tutoring program with that Spanish teacher for that student one-on-one, maybe during their lunches, after school. I'll see if I can get money for activity bus. You see where I'm going? Yeah, no problem. That's how that would work. Okay, so again, when I send out the needs assessment form again, next spring, please take a good look at it. If you don't need anything, it's okay. And again, if you want to request something, you'll just click on the request form. It's pretty easy to fill out. Same thing, email address, school district. You fill out all that information, you get to a next, and it says, what do you want to do? And then you can fill all that information out. And all that really does, the request form, is that generates me to call you, discussion, then we lay out a plan. All right. Final things, I just went over these. This is what money I have set aside for in these particular areas. Instruction and tutoring, extraordinary transportation costs, I talked about both of those. Fees, activities, field trips, clubs, etc. You have a student in your district, it's a $15 fee to be part of National Honor Society. I can reimburse you for that. Equipment, athletic instruments. Student used to play violin in her class. The violin got lost in all of her movement transportation. We found another violin for her. It was $350. Can you help us out? Yes, I can. So those are the types of things. School supplies. I have some backpacks here. I gave some out to some school districts, but I still have probably another 15 or 20 left. First come, first serve. If some of you want to leave with them today, you're welcome to do so. Counseling services, I just spoke about that. I put the job descriptions in. They'll basically be coming through our district. And basically I'll hire them, but I'll be creating a posting once it's approved at the board level to go out to each of the liaisons and the superintendents to say, please post. And then from the applications that I get, I will set up an interview time, and then we will schedule those interviews to see who best fits those tools. And obviously, the last piece is supporting parent involvement. I'm trying to collaborate with some outside agencies for some of their family activity nights and some of their parent planning nights, things like that. So I have some money for that too. Again, there's the fund request. Okay. Again, in summary, thank you. You've been a great audience. Just err on the side of the student, and communication really is the major key on this with all of your stakeholders and support personnel. Don't make the decisions in a vacuum. And that's always my best advice. Like when I'm not absolutely sure, I always call these two ladies over here for some advice. And sometimes they didn't always have the answer and said, hey, you know, that could go either way. Use your best judgment. Talk to your superintendent. Talk to your VA. Talk to other people, administrators. What's in the best interest of the student? And then when in doubt, give me a call. That's the best thing. All right? Here are the next training sessions for McKinney-Vento 102. I'll be sending out that information so you don't need to write it down. But again, the one for Woodstown will be here. And that will be mostly just a quick review of some of this, but mostly scenario-based. I only anticipate that to be about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. But there'll be more scenarios, and then we can talk shop. And then lastly, if you would, and I'll send this out to all the people that were in attendance, just a little survey. Helps me plan and prepare for future training sessions. Questions, comments, thoughts? Anybody wants to take me aside after, either beat me or ask me questions, I'll take both.
Excellent job.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
How do we stop this?
I believe you just hit stop the live button.
Just hit the live button?
Yeah, I think so.
Stop and complete. Yeah, that's it. Awesome.
Complete.